for the workshop, Monday, October 16th of 2017 at 6:37. Thank you all for coming. All right, we're going to go right into the draft of the draft fall town meeting.
Do you want to do the pledge?
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
Probably
Yeah, let's
should.
go. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was just going off the agenda.
So, you have your packets that's got an agenda on it.
Another copy of that one.
And we circulated the warrant out today, the end of last week, to town council, staff, and some others. And we've already received some different comments on it. So I've given you a revised warrant, and I'd like to work with that one instead of the one that's in the packet. And it's across the bottom of this one, it has revised draft of 10/16/17 on the face of it. And I've given that to the advisory committee members that are here, and we'll take whatever changes we get coming out of tonight over the next day or so. Just to go back to what timeline is, the object is to have this on your business meeting on the 23rd. For you to sign, subject to any just proofreading, and any final changes like we have to do. And that,
is next Monday.
it's next Monday,
Next Monday.
yep. And that would let me get it to the advisory committee the following day. So, let me just start walking through this, and we've got Kelly. If there's any questions from anyone, I'd really like to try to entertain them tonight, so we'll get them answered or get them under investigation as quickly as possible. So going, just quick rewind, going back to the presentation that we made on the town's audits for 13, 14, 15, and 16, you'll remember that there were several kinds of deficits. Some were in the capital accounts, and some were on the operations side. For fiscal 2013, 2014, and 2015, you had $223,396 dollars in deficit. Now, if you look at the management letter in that audit, you're gonna find about 212,000, give or take, 211 and change. And then you have to actually look at the balance sheets at the end of fiscal 16 to see the snow and ice deficits. So if you take the FY16 bottom line deficit of all those years, the collective balance sheet, and you subtract the operating deficit, you get right around $12,000 and change, give or take, on snow and ice. So you have to pay them both off. So this will do that. The only change to this article from what we sent you came actually out of a review of Article 2, and we've added to cover operating deficits in the general fund operating budget to make it clear, because it's in the heading, but it's not in the warrant article itself. So we'd be happy to take any questions on, do you want to do them article by article, or do you want me to go through them all and then come back to them?
I think article by article we could.
Okay. So if there's any questions on that one at all?
Good with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure about these numbers are to take care of everything 100%?
Yes.
And that after these,
Except for the debt that's being raised on the DE1.
okay.
You do have a question in the back. I don't know if you're going to take them at all.
What's that? Okay. And then one last final question for you here. These, obviously, if there's another issue that comes up in any of the audits that would kind of predate to these, you know how we have hiccups that come up here and there, we would still have to raise or appropriate funds at another town meeting, correct? Wait, this is
Unless,
working?
unless we had money in the current appropriation that we could use to cover that.
Okay,
But as far as coming up with a significant amount of money to cover it, this should cover everything.
okay. Certainly.
I think it would
In
be,
conjunction with that, though, what's the likelihood of finding something else that would have occurred in those 3 previous years?
I would say there's probably a 10% chance as things are
Yeah.
going, cause I'm still working on cleaning up all of the withholding accounts, a lot of the accounts receivable. So hopefully those, those are the 2 big areas. But other than that, all of the grants, everything is cleaned up, except for I've still got a couple of things I'm working on with the emergency, management grants. I found pretty much everything. I've got a few things, may have to do something there, but it would be a minimal amount of money.
and I want to distinguish between finding something that maybe changes an account balance or changes a balance sheet number a little bit, and finding something that creates a deficit.
Yeah.
I would put the chances of finding something back in 13, 14, 15, 16 in deficit at even lower than
Yeah,
10%.
It's- yeah.
I'd put them at very low.
Okay.
Alright.
Yes, Jude?
My question has to do with, this is coming from free cash,
Yes, it is.
so it's been certified.
Yes, we have, in that packet that I sent to y'all, there's a memo that explains the certified free cash was $1,042,000 and change, 500. I can't remember the exact number, but $1,042,000 and then some Midland 3-figure change. Yes, this is coming from free cash. Though town council would like me to call it something different, and we'll get that settled in the next couple of days with DOR.
Yes, Julie?
My other question had to do with, we got a schedule from the Board of Selectmen, and that tonight was the day for the public presentation of the FY17 audit.
Yes, that was assuming that Worcester Regional Retirement System
Would have
had
us-
their number out quite a bit. And I think I've been putting people on notice over the last, month or so, that didn't look like that was gonna happen. So at this point, I'm frankly reluctant to even issue a new date until Worcester at least issues their numbers.
And even though Worcester issues their numbers, it still has to go to Light and Water for them to do their number before it comes back to us
Yep.
to do ours.
Exactly.
So there's, and again, the town stuff is done.
Right.
We are waiting on Worcester Retirement and then obviously Light and Water.
And they're waiting on Worcester.
Right, we're waiting on them
Yep.
at this
Okay.
point, which is a great thing for this community.
Right,
I mean-
so,
The auditor
about
did
time.
prepare a balance sheet and a financial statement, which he was comfortable with and which the Department of Revenue relied upon, which is pretty typical because many towns' audits aren't ready until November, December, January or such. And yet they're trying to get that free cash certified earlier in the year.
okay,
And some of this information is actually in the TA report, on the weekly report.
yeah.
He has been putting this in there just so everybody's aware, and this is online. So if the citizens want to look at that, they're more than welcome to look at that as well.
So my question is, doesn't look to be any major deficits within the audit for FY17?
There were none.
None.
There were none?
There were none in 16, other than that school committee that kept other than the school capital that
Right.
kept getting forward.
Right.
There were none in 17 either,
No.
Okay, good.
you know. So if there's no other questions on Article 1, I'll move on to Article 2. You may recall that in FY 2015, the sewer department had a reimbursement due to the town. I think this was driven primarily by health insurance, if I remember right.
No, kind of. It was mainly because of a calculation error in the form they were given for the formulas for their
Okay.
budgeting process.
So they need to pay that back. That's on the balance sheet as well. As with Article 1, this cash is solving a technical deficit on your books. So this will wipe that out, and then next year, that will actually roll into your free cash for fiscal 18. So even if nothing else happened during the course of the year, you're gonna have this as free cash next year. Same with the sewer fund, except for in the sewer fund, we refer to them as retained earnings. Exactly the same thing, different term. Please don't ask me why.
Understood.
And again, the only change here was to reference the deficits in the sewer fund operating budget, as we did up above in Article 1.
I see.
And just, there is also an additional, deficit in the sewer, but it's the same thing as we had with the school for the sewer pump station. It's a deficit that they have, but they hit it against their retained earnings. They wouldn't certify that amount. But now that we've gotten the borrowing, that's cleared it out. So just when you do see, the final numbers for 17, you're gonna see an additional capital project of the sewer pump station of, I think it's $80,000. But that,
Right.
I just wanna be sure that there's no confusion that
They paid
that's.
bills with operating cash
Yeah.
against the capital project, same
I
as you
see.
did for the schools. You paid capital project expenses out of your operating fund, which is a technical deficit on your capital project. And as our borrowing did on the schools, wiped out that technical deficit, the borrowing on the sewer will wipe out their 85, whatever it was, $89,000 deficit as well.
And their free cash was also certified?
Yeah, their free cash was in the neighborhood of 740,
743, I think.
743.
Okay,
Retained earnings, but yes, it's
Okay.
exact same thing.
gotcha.
So are there any
Any-
other questions
questions?
on that? Article 3, we had two late bills. One was $11.92 on some fire extinguishers or something. It just fell through the cracks. And another one was a water bill from eons ago that somebody found someplace somehow, and we owe it.
Okay.
So it's $63.92. This one will take 9/10 vote.
Quick question on why was from the FY 2018 DPW Buildings and Ground account struck?
Because town council asked me to, and it was one of the few, I wanted him to win a few.
Okay.
Understood. Sounds good.
I don't know.
All right.
Where's this money coming from?
Alan will have to pay it out of his already stretched fiscal 2018 budget.
Budget.
Working wizardry over there.
Work your magic, Alan. Okay, Article 4.
Article 4, you may recall that at the time of presenting the fiscal 18 budget,
Mhm.
we had planned to use $325,000 from the ambulance reserve.
Mhm.
But at the time of the appropriation, we could only show that we had 225 in the account at that moment in time. And Deb Wagner from DOR had said, I can't go along with y'all appropriating any more than you can show me on the books as of the town meeting.
And that was new.
That was new, they'd never done that before.
Okay.
In fact, you were appropriating almost the entirety of your year's earnings
Mhm.
before that. It was new, but it was fine.
Right.
They came out, they spent the afternoon with us, Kelly, myself, the auditor. And we were able to accommodate it, but now we need to complete the plan. Do you know how much is in there as of today, Kelly?
I think it's like 160 something.
Yeah, so.
I mean, it's well over the 100.
So we've met our plan, and this may take a couple of years for you to get swung around to the new way. DOR wants you to do it, but I think over time, you can get there fairly easily.
So are we over appropriating on the, so how do we plan on catching up? Is it just naturally gonna catch up, or we have to, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because remember we went to a deficit,
yeah, you know, I recall, we had to go into July, I think we made the money back almost in July
Yeah.
to appropriate. for
I
fall
mean,
town meeting.
what happened was you converted to a system of running your ambulance from receipts reserved for appropriation, but there was zero in the, basically, zero in the receipts reserved for appropriation when you did it. So you were running more like an enterprise fund than you should have been. And so if we can keep the 325, now remember, that's supposed to go up, because you have to cover not only your ambulance $50,000 plus a year lease, all those expenses, but 4 full-time firefighter EMTs.
That's right.
Okay.
So this 325 has to go up. But if you can constrain how you move your receipts up a little bit each year instead of to where you need to be, you'll be fine, because we also increased in January, or it might have been effective January, the billings, the billing rates. And those were what, about April 1 before they really started to?
Yeah, and we're starting to see that more each month, so, you know, it is increasing.
Okay.
It just took a while. By the time we raised the rates, they billed it, you know, it took 3-4 months before the first kind of bill started to work its way through the system.
Okay.
If this article does not pass, you will have to, probably, most likely, call a special meeting to cut the budget by $100,000.
Okay. The overall budget or the budget of the EMS services?
The budget of the EMS service.
So if we cut to EMS, don't we lose?
Potentially, you would lose ALS service because.
Potentially.
Yep, and then you will not be able to get an ambulance back, you'd have to contract by private ambulance.
It would
And
be a
that's a
tough,
permit, there's no like.
It's a
probate-
license.
Yeah.
it's a license.
It's a license.
It would be a
with
tough nut. I mean, that really is the choice.
Okay.
But, I mean, we explained this well at the annual town meeting, so everybody was aware
Yeah.
that
is coming
this was coming back in
Right.
the fall, so it, you know, it should be an easy.
I think it should be,
Mhm.
but I do want to keep the consequence front and center.
Mhm.
So everybody understands.
Any other questions on any of that at all? Okay.
No questions?
Operating, Article 5 is a backfill to this year's operating budget. We have 3 items. The first is $2,500 for buildings and grounds. You may recall that we bought 2 new mowers. The light plant made a large contribution towards those, but they actually came in a little bit above what we'd planned. That in part was because we didn't trade the old mowers in after some consideration and heeding the advice of the Inspector General. Alan felt he should retain those mowers for parts and to be able to do a better job trying to auction them rather than just trading them in, to make sure we could try to stay on the good side of the Inspector General. So he paid for the bills, came out of his regular supplies. I want to try to refill that.
Would we have to deem those surplus?
At some point, yeah.
Okay,
When you go to dispose of them.
I got you.
On the highway, you may recall, we had a plan, some monies from the light plant, and some monies in a warrant article to replace a truck body, a dump body. Unfortunately, over the winter, the truck that the body was supposed to go onto experienced advanced deterioration, and we had 2 Sanders basically die on us. And so that's when Alan came up with the plan to acquire the 2 Sanders.
Right.
But we can't use any of the money that was, and the light and water switched gears, and they said, fine, you can use the money, but we can't use the dump body money because it says
Dump body.
dump body.
I
It
got
doesn't
you.
say Sanders. Additionally, the truck that we were gonna put the body on is basically done. You'll be very lucky if it makes it through the season. So, we need to backfill that. Light and Water put their 10,000 up. Alan paid the balance out of highway supplies, but we need to backfill that. And item 3, if you'll remember the ladder truck that had a $23,000 pump failure last year,
Right.
it has had an $18,000, give or take, electrical failure this year. So, you know, we're in much better shape. I talked with the chief, even though we raised by a multiple of 5 what we've been setting aside to repair apparatus, this would really be very hurtful to his operations if he had to try to eat this in his budget. So I'd like to try to get $15,000 back in there
Okay.
towards that 18 plus or minus $1,000 expense. And this is coming from free cash as well. These are what I would consider to be capital items, one-time items, so I'm very comfortable putting this into the operating budget if you all are. And happy to answer any questions on this one. And Alan's here to answer any questions you might have of him.
No, I think this was all explained earlier. I don't know how many.
I think we went through it when we dealt with the sander purchase.
Yeah.
You have no questions, Doug?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
No questions?
Okay.
moving on.
Article 6, the salaries that we set for our building inspector and for our plumbing and electrical, frankly, do not anticipate a project as large and as complex as the school. So the building inspector is already on an hourly rate. He can simply do some more hours for his inspections. I still need the money to pay him. We don't budget for these kinds of projects. The gas and plumbing inspectors, we could increase their revolving fund, but frankly, this is gonna go several years. We think, after discussing with the building inspector, I've been through this in some other communities, this is the exact same thing that happened to him in Townsend. We think the better thing is we'll leave them on the revolving fund for the single-family homes and the, gas station that gets retrofitted in the convenience store and that kind of stuff, but the school will handle separately. So, that said, we need money to do it. And we think that the cost of inspection will run from December 1 of 17 to June 30. We think we can do that within $25,000. And this would come from free cash as well. Now, the $130 plus or minus $1,000 building fee, permit fees, are coming into your books as miscellaneous revenues. But for the next couple of years, the best thing really is to pay for it with free cash, because it's only for this project, and then keep those permit fees in your miscellaneous revenues. They'll flow to your free cash as well.
Okay.
And how did you come up to the determination of 25,000? Just plucked it?
What you have to do is look at the building plans and try to have a sense of what kind of work they're gonna do between December 1 and June 30. So they're gonna start with the demolition, which has virtually no inspections involved. Then, depending upon the weather, and depending upon how they stage the work, if they do the demo all from the front, they start on the back to trench to start to do their footings. And then it depends upon the weather. So after talking with the building inspector, looking at the sequencing of work, trying to get a handle of how many inspections might be involved during that course, he felt that $25,000 was most likely sufficient to handle it.
Okay.
We also knew that we had a safety valve in May. And that if for some reason, and today's not an indication that this might happen, if for some reason we have this wonderfully warm winter and they truly can work very, very aggressively through the winter, we'll still have enough money to get to the annual town meeting, and then we can further backfill it if we need to.
Okay.
But we have to start with a number somewhere.
Okay, sounds good. Joe, you have a question?
Yeah, I did. On other school projects, the high school, middle school project, I believe the inspectional fees were part of that project, so the town didn't have to pay.
Right. No, you're right.
Well-
But what's happening is they're gonna pay their permit fees, and that's gonna come back in. It's about $140,000,
Yeah,
give
and
or
you
take.
still have to pay your inspectors.
Right.
I don't know about the other project.
Paid the inspectors.
Pardon?
It was charged off to the project.
Yes.
Not the building permits and fees this was in addition, the inspections are charged off to the project, they're billed to the project.
Yes.
Is she referring to a clerk of the works?
No, the inspectors should be paid out of the project money,
Not from the town.
not from the town.
There
Not
are
from free
inspectors.
But I understand that. That money, their money is coming in for the inspections from the school project. But we need obviously we need to front the money for our inspectors, they're our inspectors. We're getting reimbursed all the inspectional monies.
Are you
From the
saying
school
that the
project.
schools paid the inspectors directly?
They paid for the inspections, yeah.
And they will.
They will.
Yeah.
That's what the $130,000 plus
Right.
dollars is for.
They didn't build the town, they built the school department.
Right, because it was a school.
The
project.
school project will pay for a building, plumbing, gas, and electrical permit.
Right.
Those monies will go into your permit revenue line.
Right.
You will then pay your inspectors to go inspect the project, the same as if it was a single-family home or anything else.
Mhm.
So I'm not quite sure, and maybe I can talk with Julie offline about that, because I'm confused about how it would be done elsewise, and maybe if we can spend a few minutes, I can try to understand what
Right,
she's
no,
saying.
they would bill directly for the inspections as they did the inspections
You
to
may,
the project.
you may have had a different system then. I don't know how many years ago that
I don't
was.
It
know.
was
Were
a
they,
while ago.
were they town employees at the time? Because if they were town employees, that should not have happened.
'Cause they-
No, I don't
other
think-
resources
I think
can't
it was
pay our-
outsourced.
Okay, yeah,
That's why.
because I
That,
think it's because they're town
even then, they shouldn't
employees.
have been paid.
We have
Right.
to pay them their wages.
Right.
It can't be paid by an outside source.
Your inspectors should never be paid
That's like a
by the
subcontractor.
owner of the project. They're your inspectors. They need to be responsible to you. Their financial relationship needs to be with you.
Right.
So that opens up a door to ethics.
Right, it would be an ethics thing.
It's a real problem, yeah.
It would be an
I'll-
ethics
Julie,
thing.
I'll talk with you afterwards to
Alright.
try to understand. So, but that's the purpose of this, and that's how I got to that number,
Understood.
and that's why I feel comfortable even if that number should end up a little bit shy.
Okay. I like that.
Article 7, so let's first deal with the boiler at the Emergency Management Center. I think we've kept you apprised of this. There is a fear of failure this coming heating season. We have an estimate of around $10,000. By the time everybody says they understand wage rates until you hand them the actual sheet. If there's something else that goes wrong, you get the jacket off the boiler and you see a little bit of asbestos. Who knows what could go wrong with these projects? And then you go out to get your quotes, and somebody, if I got a bid against somebody, I'm gonna make sure I make some real money, So Alan, I think, has added about 25% overall. Can Alan?
Thank you, sir.
Richard did a real nice job. Not only is he applying his emergency management grant,
To capital.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
but he was able to get his hands on another,
Westminster,
Thank you.
2460 more.
Westminster wasn't able to come up with a project to use their money, so Richard came up with a project
Excellent.
to use their money.
Good job, Richard.
So the 5,000 there roughly, and then the 7,500 here, gives Alan roughly 12,500, 13,000 bucks.
Okay.
And we would burn the grant money first, and then use this 7,500, and hopefully we won't need it all.
Okay.
Works for me.
Works for me.
We'll get, once we know this is gonna be the warrant, we'll go about getting pricing, so that we can give a notice to proceed shortly after the fall town meeting, and we know we've got the dollars at hand, and we don't get as deep into the winter season.
And just to make things clear, I mean, this is eminent that this thing is gonna break. I mean, this thing is what, 80 years old,
Well, they said around 50.
50?
I believe we've said 30 before, but We found out that it's actually around 50 years.
50 years old, okay, so, all right.
Well, there's a good
It's
chance that it might
leaking
have asbestos on
Right
it
now,
or something,
that
right?
wasn't doing this before. We've had to replace a couple pipes here and there, but
As far as the burner itself,
it's not very efficient anymore.
okay. And the amount of equipment you have in that building would be a catastrophic loss to the community, correct?
My opinion, yes.
Okay. All right, thanks.
The next item, it's out of sequence a little bit. Normally, I'd love to see all your capital either done at the fall or at the annual. We're breaking it up here a little bit, kinda gotta jump ahead. The truck that we were going to replace the dump body on, as I told you, experienced a substantial deterioration. It's a 1994. It's already past its lifespan. Alan's fingers crossed, it will get through until next spring. The lead time on this is
7 months.
7 months.
So if we do this and we're looking at somewhere next May, you'll get this.
We're hoping to have this in the spring before the other truck fails, yes.
Okay.
Lead times on these trucks, it's unbelievable. The total price is around $177,500. But we have the $17,500 for a dump body. Can't use it for sanding. Remember that one? And you'll give this to the advisory committee as
Yes.
well? Yes. Perfect. So the idea is to appropriate $160,000. Both of these come from free cash, which is generally recognized as an acceptable use. One-time expenditures, capital expenditures. We'll tap the 17.5 that's there for the dump body. That'll give us the 177.5 that we need in total.
Just
This has not had a chance to be reviewed by the capital committee yet,
That was my next
but
question.
it will before the town meeting.
This week.
Okay,
I think did you get a date scheduled?
It's either gonna be Thursday or Friday. I
Okay.
gotta talk to Bob after.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Kurtz, did you also add, have you met with the capital planning committee on the potential truck that we talked about? Can you do that after this meeting? Can you just, I wanna bring that up. Again, what I was talking to Mr. Kurtz about is he's got a beautiful trailer. It's beautiful. It's great. He tows around with his personal vehicle. So a blue plate trailer on a personal vehicle, in my eyes, constitutes a lot of different bad things to happen. So I'm looking at, potentially looking at maybe next year, looking at potential of some type of pickup truck.
They have that on the plan.
They do.
It's on the plan.
Oh, that's what I needed to know. Thank you so much.
The meals tax would pay for that nicely, because you don't have much of money any.
I know that. I know that.
It's just my chance.
I understand that.
I'm sorry, I can't
I
let it
understand
go.
that. Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions,
Sure.
concerns with this article.
On 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on the emergency management boiler replacement,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that anywhere on the capital plan. And I don't know how it got here,
Well,
without going through capital planning to be referred here, to
it's
then get on the article, to then get to the town meeting,
it's on the agenda for our meeting this week.
which is after today. I'm just saying. With the DPW highway, the six-wheel truck, the issue that I see is, the dump body was for a 1984 truck, is what we approved through capital planning last year. Not the 1994 that we're discussing in this article. So I don't know how, that affects the statement that Mr. Tanzini just stated with using the 17.5 for a dump body from the 1994, instead we're using a dump body from the 1984. I don't know if that,
Well, the article says, as generally illustrated, we're using it for a dump body. The fact that it's for a different machine, we think falls within the confines of the approved article. The other thing is that the bylaw requires that all the projects have gone through capital planning for review before the town meeting vote. So it is quite possible for the capital committee to have begun its cycle, completed its cycle, and then have something that came up. But I know that Alan has submitted it, and I'm, because we were very aware that you needed to have a review and report from the capital committee before town meeting could vote on it.
Okay.
And
Yes,
just
Mr. Mayor.
again, as a, you know, as the bylaws state, for the emergency management boiler, if that is the catastrophic event, we have a mechanism to bring that before the capital planning
Mhm.
as a catastrophic event, which hasn't happened up until now.
Right.
It just seems like we're going cart before the horse on both of these.
Okay.
Well,
See
I
what I'm
mean, if
saying?
the committee likes that we relabel these, you know, as catastrophic events, because they feel more comfortable with that, I think that Alan can change his memo pretty easily. Be happy to accommodate them.
So what you're saying is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is having these on here right now before having them going through the capital planning is wrong.
Seems inappropriate, seems out of schedule.
Okay.
But if I look at the bylaws, and Mr. Terenzini's technically, I believe, correct in what the thing says, but it implies that it's, you know, there's a process between capital
You're right.
planning, the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
the town meeting, and so forth, and we are not following it.
No, what we're doing, and we could have put a benchmark holder here and called it whatever until the end of the week. And then, because again, as far as what the bylaw stipulates, it'd be prior to town meeting. It's not prior to, this is a draft. So we could have put a benchmark place card holder in this, but we thought it would be more appropriate for the people to see right away.
Well, I was gonna say, there's also the, in that,
Mhm.
and I don't wanna argue
No,
with you.
no,
at
please,
all.
no.
But there was also the issue that it says, that the, I don't know exactly how it's worded, I wish I would've brought it, but it basically says that the review that we do by January first
Mhm.
is what you get to plan capital planning.
Right.
So the question would be, how did it actually get to the board? You know, because it's supposed to come to capital planning first.
Well,
Right.
in an ideal world, which you don't live in, I would agree with Mr. May.
Just saying what the
in that-
bylaws state.
In the bylaw says that it has to have come before the board before the vote at town meeting. It doesn't speak to when the board can consider the item. And in an ideal world, I would agree with you. However, we live in a work to failure world. We don't live in a replace to plan world here. And unfortunately, these two items have failed with very poor timing. I would have much rather had a single capital plan next spring.
I'm not disputing that at all, and I understand things fail. I
Right.
just understand that process is a process too, and we didn't even try to bring it to capital planning.
Mr. Chairman?
They weren't broke until
What is
most
the,
recently.
what is the recommended resolution to this issue? So I understand the issue, but what is the resolution?
Just saying, I just say follow
So
the
you're just
bylaws
saying to
as
say it,
stated.
correct? That's,
I just saying, follow the bylaws as stated. It says if there's a major catastrophe, an unforeseen event,
Mhm.
to schedule with the town, and we will, it says right in there,
Okay.
that we will meet. It doesn't say we have an option to, we have no option. It says we will meet to go over it, which is exactly what we ended up doing last April 18th,
Who's
because we had the
Who's
same
Capital Planning Committee.
capital
Oh,
planning.
yeah, but you are meeting.
Right, we're gonna meet either Thursday or Friday of this week, which we will approve these.
Are you
The
on?
board won't vote on this
Yeah.
until next Monday.
Right.
So, the board, again, hasn't voted the warrant yet, it's just a draft. So we will have met before the vote gets taken on the warrant, for these two items to go in this year's capital, as well as whatever items he's gonna bring forth to be in next year's capital.
And that should satisfy the need of the of the bylaw, correct?
Technically,
so.
technically, it doesn't even have to be in front of you before you vote to put it on the warrant, but it does have to have been in front of you before the town meeting can vote on it.
Understood. Okay. Thank you, Mr. May. Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
If it was a real emergency, they could have gone to the planning to the the advisory committee and got money out of our reserve fund.
No, you're right. But unfortunately, yes,
But if you wanna take advantage of $5,240 worth of grant money,
Yeah.
we have to go
But it was
through.
an emergency and that didn't happen.
but we can't use,
You know, the real
I see what you're saying. The utilization of grant money with advisory committee stabilization funds or emergency funds wouldn't,
Well, let me just say, Mr. Chairman, that 3 months into the fiscal year, frankly, no. We wouldn't go to the advisory committee unless we just have absolutely no other choice whatsoever.
Right.
Because once that money's out of the reserve fund, there's no way to backfill it. It's the
Right.
only line item where we can transfer in this manner. And to deplete that's why we didn't go for the ladder truck.
understood.
Didn't go
Yep.
this year, didn't go last year. Because to deplete that fund substantially, this early in the year, takes away our running room for the next 9 months.
Okay, thank you.
So on Article 8, this is driven by a change in the statute coming out of the Municipal Modernization Act. For those who read these kinds of things in order to get to sleep at night, when you get a bond, you get a bond premium. Someone actually pays you to lend you money. A concept I've never understood, but that's the way it is. Under the old statute, you applied it against future payments against that bond. The statute has now changed to take away that option, and you have only 2 options. The first is to use the bond premium to pay directly down against the cost in its entirety. All at once, you don't amortize it over the life
They
of
won't
the
give you a
loan.
coupon premium, you're now on the total bond.
It's on the, no, it's not a coupon premium, it's on the total bond. Or you can use it towards other similar projects the town meeting would vote on. The simplest thing here seemed to be to simply, for the police station and for the schools, was simply to apply it. In the future, especially as capital money is extremely tight, and this was a debt exclusion as well, this wasn't a general bond. This seemed to be the most appropriate way to do it. We did include at the end of the packet for you the actual change in the language in the statute. And this is one that I think came up, Mary Jane Handy was the one, because the other DOR rep hadn't caught it, Tony hadn't caught it, our financial advisor hadn't caught it. Mary Jane pointed out this change in the statute. So we just thought that of the 2 courses of action, this was the best one to follow. We can go in another direction if you
Who
want.
was the discussion with? Was it with the treasurer?
There was the treasurer, collector, Kelly, myself, Tony, Deb Wagner, and Mary Jane Handy, I believe and Mary Carney.
A lot of bright minds. I'll
I
take the
believe that was the
recommendation.
full complement in the room that day. And I think that's, we touched upon this in the after meeting brief that we gave you about 2 weeks or so ago at your last board meeting.
Okay, great.
Again, different option if you want to go for it, but we would have to decide that pretty quick.
No,
This
that
is
makes
good.
sense
This
to do
makes
it that
sense.
way. I mean,
Okay.
6 in one hand, half dozen the other, really.
Article 9,
on a
rescission
second.
of, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Do we know how much the bond premium is?
The initial bond premium was around 12,000, I think.
Yeah.
They're different each time you offer a ban, and then the final bond. They're at the time that you place it. If you want to think in terms of 1/100th of 1%, probably have a sense of what you might be looking at.
any other questions? No, okay, moving on.
Article 9, it's important that you periodically look at your debt authorizations to see if you have some debt that has been authorized but unissued. And once you see that, discuss with the departments whether or not they still need it. And in this case, the Board of Health does not need the balance. This comes from 2008. These were for the community septic system loans. There's $195,000 that they didn't borrow. I think the authorized borrowing
400.
is 400. So you did borrow about 205, 195 you haven't. Lori doesn't see the need and would like to get it off the books.
On the books, does that represent like an unborrowed debt? Is it?
Yes.
Okay, so when you remove this, we're not getting money or losing
No,
money, it's just
no, it
simply
just
taking it off your
washes
book?
off.
Okay.
Think of it if you're, looking at, think of it as credit card limit.
Okay.
You're taking away some credit card limit.
I don't know if you guys like reserve the 400,000 on the books and then you only borrow.
No, we
against-
actually go back in and adjust the authorized 400,000 down to 205.
Okay.
Right, well, and they had never really carried that on the books before. So in my UMass class that I'm taking right now, I'm learning how we track that in the financials.
Okay.
There's special fund balance accounts that will show those votes so that we can keep track of this, so it wouldn't go this many years before there could be
You
the
should be
decision.
showing the debt, the amount authorized, the purpose, and the article and town meeting vote. So ATM 2017, ART 8, because you need to be able to go back and look at these things, and then you show how much has been borrowed against it. And you periodically go in, and it's not uncommon to need to do this every couple of years. If there's no questions on that. Okay, the next one is, and this was that, if you wondered why you had a number of columns at the end of your draft warrant that were just check numbers and dates and amounts. You have $30,000, give or take, of uncashed or unaccounted for checks, going back to 2002.
Unaccounted for, are they checks from citizens, or are they checks in the town, or?
That we've written,
Okay, the town's written,
payments
okay.
that we've made,
Nobody cashed.
that nobody cashed, or the checks didn't clear, we can't see them in the system. Part of this is just the collapse of the system.
Yep.
Part of it is that if you can imagine trying to balance a checkbook in fiscal 15 for a check issued in fiscal 2, state of the records. So there's two ways to do this. The first is to follow the state's abandoned property statute. I don't know, I go on every
See
month
if you
or
get
so.
any money outstanding.
It sounds silly, but between myself and the folks who use my last name or admit to being in the family, we've probably collected about $1,200 over the 5 years, from a savings bank life insurance account to a deposit on a, just an electric account. It's unbelievable. An insurance company
Post it right on there for you.
where you overpaid, and who knows. So we can either go through that process, or the statute provides an alternative process just for municipalities. Now, interestingly, when I first started talking about that, someone in the building said, "Oh yeah, we always just we used to just run this advertisement, and we did this and we did that," which looks suspiciously like the statute. But I can't see where you've ever adopted the statute.
Okay.
So the object here is to adopt the statute. We're gonna work on the tailings.
Okay.
Try to get those down. And then we would have this method of, to follow, which for any funds which are truly abandoned, become the property of the town, miscellaneous revenues. So the advantage is, it's a little different process than the abandoned property process, but you turn the money over to yourself at the end of it, instead of turning the money over to the Commonwealth.
I assume, I'm gonna look it up in here, but 200A, section 9A, that's the stipulations to,
Yes, and we
how many
included
days
that. I didn't include it in this, yes, they are. They're included in this, a packet at the end, as well as the original one I sent out. And because somebody I thought might have a question of,
Bring it right there, first one.
Oh, okay, perfect.
It says in any city, town, or district that accepts this section in the manner provided in section 4 of chapter 4. I went ahead and included section 4 of chapter 4.
So when you put this on here, it looks like you have 1 year to claim it, and if it's not claimed, we can write it off the books type
Yeah.
deal? Okay.
Provided you're issuing it on check that says void after 1 year, and you're doing this, and you're doing that.
Okay.
Town council has suggested we should put the entirety of the article into the warrant, of the statute, into the warrant. You've never done that before. I think certainly appending it at the end, putting it in the
Makes sense.
summary.
Yeah.
I don't know what the advisory committee is gonna put out for a report, putting it in their report. I think that kind of thing makes sense.
Okay.
But to start putting them in the warrant at length, I'm not sure does, but we'll resolve that over the next few days.
Okay.
I got a question, just, I guess more of a why. If this is a mass general law.
Yep.
Why do we have to adopt it? I thought we would be subject to any mass general law.
You're not.
Good point, but we're not.
There are many statutes that says, you shall do this. Then there are many statutes that say, if you want, you can accept this statute at the local level, and then you can do this. This particular statute, and this is 2 pages in from the back, perhaps 3 in.
Yeah, I see it.
Says, in any city, town, or district that accepts this section, there shall be an alternative procedure for disposing of abandoned funds held in the custody of the city, town, or district as provided in this section. So you have to vote to accept it first.
Good question.
I would have thought the same.
Massachusetts is a variety of statutes that prescribe what you will do, and a variety of statutes that offer you an opportunity to do some things if you wish to do them. Okay? And Doug, if you have any questions on that statute, after you get a chance to look at it, just give us a shout. I'm sorry, I've lost my.
Article 11?
The zoning maps in the Board of Selectmen's office for these next 2 items? Is that
No.
what those big rolled up things were? No?
No.
Okay.
School.
Oh, that's what that was.
Article 11 are deposits to the stabilization in the OPEB accounts. They follow the memo that I've given you. They follow the uses of free cash policy, which were adopted the other night as part of the financial policies. The theory being that you take your certified free cash, you deduct anything that you need at default, which we've done with the school and the capital projects. Normally, I would hope you would never have these old operating deficits again. Kind of leave them out of the discussion. Then I deduct what I think we might need in the spring for snow and ice or other deficits. And then you take half of the remainder and you use that for working capital, cash flow, during the course of the year to make sure you have enough cash in the accounts at all times. And for anything that you might, if you want to try to do a small capital program in the spring, that money's still sitting there in the spring. And then you take the other half and you distribute it partially to the operating stabilization, partly to the capital stabilization, and partly to OPEB. The original distribution thought had been 30%, 10%, and 10%. DOR, Ms. Handy in particular, thought that we should not contribute anything to the OPEB because it was so small as to be meaningless. It's not gonna move the dial on anything. I thought it was something that the town, it needed to stay in the forefront, make sure people are thinking about it, and that we at least make some contribution towards it. So that's when I revised the formula from 30, 10, and 10 to be 35 to the operation stabilization, 10 to capital, and only 5 to OPEB, to try to kind of balance out those two competing views.
What is the total amount to OPEB that we're?
We don't have a solid liability number at this point.
Do we have a ballpark within?
No.
I wouldn't want, based upon the document we were able to produce last year, I wouldn't even wanna guess.
Do we have an estimate of what it's over?
No, we
Over
need to
five, is it
hire,
over 500,000, 100,000, do we,
don't know.
no?
We need
okay.
to hire,
It's
yeah,
totally
we
out
need to
there.
hire an actuarial,
You need to
Okay.
think,
Which is part
you
of
need
our
to think in
process
terms of six
this year.
figures.
Okay.
yeah.
And let me say that the likelihood of you having money to put away for that liability in the near term
Mhm.
are so slim that I think you really need to be working with your enterprise funds,
Mhm.
and at least try to get them up to snuff. It doesn't mean you can't do, that there's nothing you can do,
Mhm.
but work with the enterprise funds where they can, charge the appropriate revenue structure to be able to pay these, while you're chipping away at what you can.
Okay.
And if the pension should ever get fully funded, there's an immediate source that'll be available to you as well.
Okay.
And this will add to the appropriation that's already been added to the OPEB
Yeah.
appropriation, correct?
Yeah,
Which was
so
the
we have the
68?
64,
60?
608,
Right,
and
plus the
then this
20,000,
will add the
okay.
20.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes,
And where is that OPEB money that's already been voted trapped? How
It
that
is
trapped?
sitting on the balance sheet in the encumbrance fund from that year. We have an appointment, hopefully in this next week, we're trying to work out with Bartholomew to come in and take a total evaluation of all of our trust funds. That will be one of them that they will set up, that will be the OPEB trust. They hold that until at some point we would have the 250,000 minimum deposit to be able to move it and open it with the state, but they would hold that in a trust, so.
So we're looking to move it from an encumbered appropriation to an actual cash account with this trust overseer.
Mhm.
And then when it gets to the increment that you can move it to the state, we'd move it to the state, and then we'd start filling this account up again.
yes.
I believe Light and Water has done an actuarial study
Mhm.
Yes,
for OPEB.
They have.
So they are.
They're doing a great job.
Right.
and they've already started their
Right,
contributions.
the electric side of theirs is in very good shape.
It is.
The water side hasn't yet started. There's some complications there around statute.
Right.
Remember, water operates under one set of statutes and light operates under a freestanding statute. But to the extent you can get your light, your water, and your sewer fully funded,
Mhm.
even if you're not fully funded, it still makes the overall balance sheet look much more attractive
It does,
from a credit rating standpoint.
absolutely.
Okay?
And
Great.
they, and part of the sewer, the actuarial will include the sewer department for us, it will be split. So right now, our sewer, they don't know what their amount would be to start, so, we're, just so that you're not aware that they don't know what theirs is and they're just not contributing.
Mhm.
That all has to be part of the actuarial to be done, so.
And that's in process.
Well, we have the money appropriated in this year, but we will have to contact an actuarial firm, which has not
There's
taken
some,
place.
Okay.
at first, there's rules that are taking effect this year, but when we did the budget, they hadn't been finalized
Right.
yet. So we've got to see if those have been finalized. Then we'll get some quotes for some real actuarials. And then only if we have to, will we go to a software we do here in-house.
Understood. Sounds good.
I think that the in-house software will at least be improved by the first time around. They really didn't understand the need to segregate sewer, light, water, and general fund, and we had to go back through it around 4 times. And it was never, and the program that was used really didn't have the level of sophistication that you needed. So there's some other software programs, Milliman,
Mhm.
that you'd probably be familiar with.
That's okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so Article 12 and Article 13, I can't tell you anything much more than what's here. The underlined in all the parcel number inclusion was a request of town council. I did work with Lori this morning, and we're trying to get some better maps that we would hope to have for you Monday night. And we'll invite someone from the planning board to be with you
Okay.
Monday night.
Which I can do without a map.
I know.
I've got I've got some, but there was some in the back of the original package that I sent out to you last weekend.
Oh, actually,
Oh, I see what they're doing.
They used a highlighter, I don't know how well it showed up. There were a couple parcels that weren't fully highlighted, so I wasn't able to determine if they were only coming back like 500 feet.
It's right here.
So that's the best I could,
This, I got it right here.
that's all I had,
Yeah, I got it right here. I'm good.
that's all I had.
So, this is it's from this to this. And the other one
You
was.
said school, right? That's what we're looking at, right?
The big one in there?
Oh, that's what that,
That's for the
okay.
school
You're not talking
project.
about
No,
Gansett.
these are, make highway,
This
no,
is, this
highway
is,
business.
okay, but this is Gansett though, right? Right, Gansett's right here?
The high school?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, didn't Mr. Machete just acquire parcel number 26? Because if he's making a recommendation from the planning board and obtain parcel 26, that might be a potential violation of ethics.
Thank you.
Are we talking this one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I have no problem, but that is a potential
I see what
ethics
you're saying.
violation.
I see what you're saying.
So I would much rather him cover his butt
Yep.
and make sure that he abstained on this than agree to it.
Understood.
Yeah.
And the other Patriots Road property, road? Is that what your concern is too, Mr. May?
My concern is that it's also his house, and all the families, the owner of the property in question, the MBW.
I don't know if he abstained though. Do you know if he abstained from the discussion?
I have no idea, that was my question, because there's so many M's on those names of the property that's going into this, and I just was wondering if this was where this came from.
Okay, came from the planning board.
Right, but I mean, what generated the inquiry, need, change?
You'd have to inquire of the planning board.
Right.
Is this the zoning change?
Excuse me,
Yes.
sir?
Yes.
Zoning change?
Yes.
What was the question?
The question was why it was being changed.
Oh, well, there's been requests and desire to improve our land available for commercial and industrial use, and that was why we were looking to change that.
So this is potential EDIC land?
We, as far as EDIC is concerned, for big business is not these properties, no. I mean,
Yeah, I see hasn't been formed yet.
And
There's
we
no
haven't been
appointed
formed yet
members
either. There's no-
Right, I'm just,
No, what they,
because there's a, he's on that board, he's on
Yep.
this board, and there's.
No, I'm
there's
well
a
aware.
whole
I'm
bunch
keeping
of-
track of that, so.
Right, and-
we're all looking, we're looking.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's just a concern.
Yep.
It
I-
made sense partly because there's a number of commercial businesses along that stretch of it.
What this is,
That were-
is,
Grandfathered, or they're now non-conforming, correct? Some of these
Right.
Some of them.
Okay.
I'm not gonna use businesses in names, but I mean, there are a few businesses on Balderville Road, that are mixed in within within residential. There's a auto body shop, I know there's a chiropractor, I know there's a couple other things on that road.
I don't think
Uh,
it covers a chiropractor down here, so you're talking between the
Right,
stretch.
I'm just saying, in general, what the purpose of this, from what I'm reading, is to make it, almost like a zoning district highway business type thing, which is a highway business zoning, so it's not like it's commercial zoning, where they're not gonna take, all these parcels and put a Walmart there. It's like small, like a lawyer's office, or a dentist office out of a house, or something along those lines. The EDIC would be looking at property that's got infrastructure, but there's no buildings and large parcels of land, like the ones off of the highway up here off exit 20. That's what we would be trying to sell, as far as if I was on the EDIC, which I'm not, but that's where I would focus my EDIC partials on.
The only
Yes,
thing I question is why are they doing it now? Why didn't they wait for the annual town meeting?
All great questions, and at this point, we don't have the answer for that, unless you
Okay.
have the answer. Doug, do you have it?
I know. It's within scope though for the fall town meeting, right? That's general bylaw, zoning
Things
law
like
changes.
this traditionally
Traditionally, but I'm
were
saying it's
done
allowed,
at
correct?
an annual town meeting.
Okay. As long as they're allowed, I
Right.
mean, it's not a,
What she's trying to say is traditionally, bylaw changes and zoning law
Small
changes
things,
are
small
not.
things
we
were.
could get into a conversation
Right.
traditionally how things have been done in
Things,
Templeton.
we need to move
And we
forward
know
from the
some things
traditional
work and
piece and
some
start
things
moving
don't.
All right,
forward.
wait a minute, time out. You gotta listen to me.
Ma'am, I don't need to listen, right, we're having a meeting.
People,
Do you understand?
special town meetings.
Listen, we're done.
I wanna explain
We're all
that to
done.
you.
Stop talking, please. Thank you. Next one.
Let me just say, we will get someone from the
Thank you.
planning board in here for
On
you
Monday?
Monday night.
That way, that would answer hopefully everybody's questions at that point. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, just,
Um,
if you can, request the chairman of the board to, planning board to come sit in.
Or a representative if he's
Yeah,
not available.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Article 14, about 6 weeks ago, you authorized the filing of a land grant for the acquisition of about 100 acres of land out at the Waller Fernal Corp. This is new, it just came into me this morning. I think the only wrinkle that remains on this one is you're eligible for a grant of 70%, but it doesn't mean you're gonna get a grant of 70%.
Oh, okay.
So what I try to explain to Mr. Henshaw is there's a balance between you need to be able to explain to the community what you're hoping to get, and a point at which if you don't get some number, you're not gonna take the grant. I mean, are you gonna buy the land if you only got a grant of $1? I don't know what the answer to that is. But if we put the 70% in that you're eligible, and you only end up getting 68.5%, that means you can't buy the land
This was-
without going back to town
This is
meeting.
Mr. Henshaw, right? He was
Yes.
sponsoring this for
Yeah.
the
Yes.
open space.
You had that,
Yep.
that big presentation.
And he was,
Okay.
he was not able to be here this evening, and I will try to get him here for Monday evening
I don't even think
as
I
well.
mean, he did his presentation well. I still have the documents beforehand. I mean, we were on board then. I don't see any sudden changes before
Well,
or after.
we need to pick a number at which if you don't get a reimbursement of at least, I don't know what the number is, he needs to pick that.
Whatever.
You're not gonna do the deal.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that, because typically in the past, they have appropriated the full amount from the community preservation funds in anticipation of the grant. That way then the money is there, but if the grant comes in, it reimburses. So this is different than how it's been done before, and I just wanna make sure,
The difference is perhaps my analness.
okay?
The way they were written before, if you got a grant of $1, they
Mm-hmm.
could still go spend all the money.
Okay, cause that's how the community preservation typically has worked.
So if
With-
if you go to town meeting and say, I want
59,000.
259,000, and we've applied for a grant, we're eligible up to 70%, and everybody says, oh, that's great, let's do it.
Mm-hmm,
And then you only get $1, they can still do it. And that changes dramatically the image that you gave to the town meeting.
okay,
So what I'm suggesting is that he and his group pick a number,
mm-hmm, okay,
and you recognize that, so what this comes down to is if you didn't get a grant at all, would you
Right.
spend 259,000? If the answer on that is yeah, then
you appropriate that and be done
you
with
just
it.
appropriate it and done
Okay.
it. If you get your
Alright.
reimbursement, you get it.
Right.
Okay,
But sometimes there are deals that are only deals you would do
if you got the grant.
if you got
So
a
this is
certain
one of
amount of
those.
Wouldn't
cash
that be at the
back.
discretion of the open space committee, though? That's their funds that they're in control of, correct?
Yes,
We wouldn't have a say in that. If they want to spend the $259,000 on it, isn't that
It
at
would
their?
have to go before the voters to.
The people will have to.
They're not in
yes.
control of it.
Okay.
They're in
But if we
They're in
appropriate it,
control of
right, then they
accounting
could
it
pull the
and
trigger. That's what we're
reviewing the
saying.
requests to expend it,
Okay.
but they can't vote it without the town meeting having
Has to
done
go.
that for them.
yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
The other thing here is the time issue here as well. John probably
Yes.
explained that to you as well. If we don't do this now, we have very little time to do it at the spring town meeting. So it's kind of important that we
He
try
said
to
that
get.
it should be back in, what, April is when you're getting everything back from the
We have
state?
to- Yeah, well, usually we have our meeting in May, and we have to have this all wrapped up before June.
Okay.
So towns that have that money appropriated really will have shown that sort of extra little bit of interest and commitment to a project, I would say,
Okay.
as a former project reviewer. It's one thing to say, yep, we've applied for the money, and if we get it, we'll seek an appropriation at the Maytown meeting. It's another thing to now send a letter that says, oh, remember our application? Here's the town meeting vote with our actual appropriation.
So, John is gonna correct that, or is he,
He's gonna provide at least a number.
He's gonna give me a number between
Okay.
now and Monday,
all right,
yes.
okay.
And-
I think he had a number,
Yeah,
but I think he wanted to communicate it out to his committee,
okay.
so that he wasn't standing all by himself without having communicated with them.
But they do have the funds in that.
Oh,
There is
yes, yeah.
Monies that are available.
Yes,
Okay.
there's substantial monies that's available.
I like that approach, that makes much more sense to
It does.
appropriate another.
Does that
rather
make
than the whole
sense?
thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you get
Cable
that?
Enterprise Fund, any other questions on that one? I'm
Nope.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I just wanna make sure everybody was good.
Cable Enterprise Fund at this point is a placeholder.
Yep.
They've asked for more monies, DOR has required some information.
Mhm.
I know that Kelly met with them to explain to them what was needed.
Okay.
I will say that in defense of what someone started to kind of comment on a little bit earlier, is you're up to 17, this is a substantial number of articles for a special meeting. Do recognize that a number of them are corrective warrant articles that you wouldn't normally see on a town meeting like this.
Right.
So the Cable Enterprise Fund, and that's it. I'm done. Doug's got the
Okay,
next
yeah, I
one.
can talk about the next one.
Okay, please.
So what I would like to propose, for the board's consideration is that we submit a, bylaw change related to town meeting and
Mhm.
the election, to move town meeting ahead of the election, so that there's opportunity at the town meeting to, discuss and have meaningful conversations around potential debt exclusions, overrides, whatever, that are gonna be coming up on the ballot.
Mhm.
So today what happens is you have the ballot first, so people walk in there blind, seeing these things. They don't know why,
I did it.
they don't know what the purpose is,
Mhm.
for anything, so,
Yeah, yeah.
He's right.
Mhm.
so it's, if we reverse them,
Mm-hmm.
then we can actually have a meaningful conversation, and people can really understand what it is they're gonna be voting for at the ballot.
That makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
So, what I would propose is that we do, all of this in early June, so that we would have, the town meeting, take place we have the third Tuesday of May, and must be completed by the fourth Tuesday of May, so that would be at the end of May,
Mm-hmm.
and then do the,
The election's in June,
right,
the first Monday in June.
yeah, in the first Monday of June. So, we've made an inquiry to, Dr. Cassavan about this timing. Does this is gonna interfere with any of the other, school activities or things like that? Now, the concern with doing it on the third Tuesday of May, the town meeting, that actually, we lose a week in the budget cycle, or does that add?
Again,
We gain a week. We gain 1 week by doing it in the third Tuesday of May, so it increases our budget cycle by a week.
Okay.
So that's basically what, I'm gonna propose and would like the board to consider, voting and approving for this. I will try and touch base with Dr. Cansavat again to see, if that, timing poses a problem for them. The elections have to be on a Monday based on,
the district
agreement.
agreement.
with the school. The other potential wrinkle, that could be, although I don't believe it to be a showstopper, is that school committee members are elected in both Templeton and Phillipston. Today, the election is on the same day in both Templeton and Phillipston.
Mhm.
But, the fact that they get elected on different days doesn't really matter. I mean, you're gonna collect the votes from Phillipston, and you're gonna collect the votes from Templeton, and the winner is the winner.
Right.
It doesn't matter that they're not on the same day.
Yep.
Because we're not voting for anybody in Phillipston, we're only voting for people in Templeton. And Phillipston votes for Phillipston
No,
people, correct?
No, the Phillipston people are on our ballot also,
Oh, okay.
as well as the Templeton people on the Phillipston ballot.
Regional school system.
Yeah.
The way you chose to set up your,
Hey.
I will first malign regional school system, then I would malign the way you chose to set it up.
Understood.
It's
So,
unfortunate.
Is that gonna impact Phillipston at all?
We should go over and talk with them once you settle on what you wanna do.
Yeah, cause I think Phillipston should be in this discussion, I think.
My question to you, and I don't wanna trump this, cause this is
This
good
is
and it
good,
needs
no,
to
this is good.
needs to happen. Have you considered maybe putting a stipulation on the election date where if you get elected, you don't start office till July 1st?
Well, they won't know they get elected until
Well,
after.
I'm saying for like
Yeah.
selectmen officials, so that way you can just say that whoever's in office is in office up until the meeting, the date, finish out their calendar
Well, from my
year.
understanding,
Yeah,
by statute, we can't do that.
okay.
So once you're elected, you're elected.
Yeah. Oh, there's no, you can't do
However,
terms?
No,
Right, by however, though, moving the election down into the first part of June, then you're not taking office, right at the, before town meeting and having to defend the articles and things at town
That
meeting.
makes
Which you don't know
that
anything
you had
about.
nothing about.
Okay.
Yeah, the
So
other,
it's-
and that's the other nice thing about Doug's idea here is that not only are you putting the debate and the discussion of the town meeting prior to the vote at the ballot box, but you have on the days, the folks who did the budget,
Right.
proposed the warrant,
right.
are knowledgeable in it.
Or they-
I mean, I've seen town meetings where it's upside down, and two members of the board honestly didn't know exactly what was in the warrant or how the budget.
No,
would
that
work
makes absolute
together.
sense. I think this makes 100%. I'm just seeing if there was another side we could approach this, but if it's state stipulated that we can't do terms, I think this is your best solution here, and then to incorporate Phillipston in the discussion as well to see if that would affect the school committee votes.
Well, in fact, I mean, you do have terms, it's a 3-year term.
No,
But
but
the
I
term
meant
date
like,
will start from the
like
from
how
the
the
date of
president's
election.
inaugurated,
I got you.
many months after he is.
Right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
to me, there
I
should
gotcha,
be an
I gotcha.
overlap of when you're incoming people and you still have your outgoing people, so that there's an opportunity
Yeah.
To cross,
to cross-train, these are the things that we kind of do, this is what I look out for,
Right.
things like that.
Because that was a very, very foreign feeling to just be in office one day and then sit at the
Yeah,
annual town meeting. I had no idea what was going on.
I was the same way, I
So,
was the same way.
yeah, that,
So
Would make
the only other
sense.
question I have is, what would the, Kelly, what would the impact be for the extra 1 week, if any?
For the budget?
Roger?
I mean, I think any extra time we can have is a great asset because, it depends, like Carter has always said, the House One revenues,
Right,
we have to know that, the insurance, we have to know that.
right.
It gives us a little extra
Schools.
time for, any Hail Marys that come at us that's like, how are we gonna figure that out?
Understood,
Gives
okay,
us the,
so this potentially is a good thing?
I think it's a
as
very
far
good
as-
thing,
Okay,
yeah.
And even if you pulled the budget back or forward, whichever way you wanna look at
Mhm.
it, you can start the budget as early as you want.
right,
Mhm.
But until you get
the school numbers.
House One, the school numbers, your insurance numbers, you got nothing. So the only place where we can truly gain time that is meaningful to us is at the tail end where Doug has put it.
I got it, okay, good.
And he did a very interesting chart, and I've gotta get that back from you, which showed, the difference between, town meeting on its weeknights, attendance,
Mhm.
and the town meeting on the weekend.
mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And I know a lot of people think that
I think I've seen
Saturday attendance would drive more attendance. Actually, except for 1 year when there was a fairly controversial warrant article. Attendance at the Saturday meetings was lower
Then Tuesdays?
Correct.
your Tuesday night meetings.
Definitely saw a decline in attendance.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Thoughts? Good, excellent. Moving on.
And the next one is not mine either. I will turn that over
you sure
to
to
the
write this,
board
Carter?
member. I do just want to circulate one thing.
Yes.
John, this was driven, I think, by a request that you had made
Yes.
to Collins. And their report coincidentally came in,
So it's-
Yeah.
Is this mine? This is mine.
This is yours, yeah.
Okay,
yes.
okay,
So I wanted to get that out there.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, so yeah, I'm proposing that we amend the general bylaw of the advisory committee and just frankly rewrite it. So essentially, the main key point
I'm sorry, I
here,
gave the wrong document out.
yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, mine's-
You want this one back?
Thank you.
for the moment, please, thank you.
So-
Sorry about that.
So
guys.
essentially, the current structure is that you have 7 advisory committee members that are appointed by the town moderator.
Did you see that? I'm sorry, I don't know if you got a chance to see that yet. It's the same thing what you wrote, almost.
Oh, okay, I didn't, when did this come in?
Today.
This morning.
Oh, that's weird.
It is weird, isn't it?
So essentially what it is that the town moderator is essentially supposed to be someone who's bipartisan within the town. He's appointing 7 members. He has 30 days to make his appointments, and then after that, he has a period which is going to elapse, and then the advisory committee can appoint their own members. There's no accountability to any of this, so that there's no way you can pull advisory committee members off or reappoint or do any of this if they are falling without of their scope. The other issue that we face too with the advisory committee is they're not a demographic of the community. So I'm proposing that we change the advisory committee to get a scope of 5 members. One is going to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, one is gonna be appointed by the town moderator, one is gonna be appointed by the school committee. That's gonna be pending legal review to make sure that we can get that stipulated so that school committee, as they are a regional committee, would somehow work that out. One is gonna be by the Light, Sewer, and Water Department in a joint appointment, and then one will be the Board of Assessors. So what we're looking to do here is to get a lean team from all walks of life within the community, and it's not appointment, so there's not a member from the school committee serving an appointment. It's somebody that they're on the school committee, they appoint one member from their pool of people that they know. It's also removing some of the stipulations saying that you can't serve on multiple committees, you can't be an employee of the town to serve on these committees. So it really opens up the doors for who can serve, who's gonna best represent the individual entity that will be doing the appointment. The general scope of what I'm trying to achieve here with this change on the advisory committee is to make recommendations to our budget. Somebody who's willing to look at stuff, provide quantitative evidence, and really review in-depth the budget proposals. Somebody who's in the community that can say, hey, school committee, or hey, assessor's office, or hey, go out there and really pull these numbers and these figures and come back with quantitative evidence and make these recommendations. Going through all the terms, it's most of it's boilerplate where they get to appoint their own member, they get to appoint their own chair and clerks and things of that nature. The other one on the bottom of this, which I think is the last section.
Section 7?
Yeah, that's to say, actually, wait. Yes, so section 7 is really the scope of their duties, is where they're making the recommendations to the town article and the town budget for the Board of Selectmen. In Templeton, we have a scope of $15 million budget, and with that $15 million budget, it's not like we're the town of Framingham. We don't need an appointing authority to make the budget. We need someone who can really help us in our scope of operations, where we're looking at finances and we're looking at these budgets, that we can have an extra set of eyes to provide us reasonable fiscal responsibility in that scope. And I think best represented by changing the appointment status from one single person who appoints 7 members to now 5 bodies appointing 5 members. So that's generally the scope of this change, is to
Okay.
just,
All right.
Which were those 5 bodies again? School committee?
so we have the school committee, there's going to be the Board of Selectmen, the town moderator, a joint appointment between the town light, water, and sewer. And then, did I say the Board of Assessors as well?
And the Board of Assessors. That's
Yep.
the 5.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
How does the current moderator select his, does he have a pool of people?
No, so currently the way that works, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So the way that works is at the end of the annual town meeting in May, you can approach the town moderator for vacancies and say, can I join this board? And he then has 30 days to make his appointment, and if he decides to sit on that appointment, the advisory committee can then appoint who they'd like. Currently, the town moderator, Derek Hall, I had spoken with him prior, and he had expressed concern saying that, you know, I'm not really sure of how I make these appointments. Do I pull resumes? Do I do this? Do I do that? He's a town moderator. His main responsibility is to run town meetings, and he tries to be bipartisan. I think by taking out the 7-member appointments out of his control, it really relaxes his ability to be bipartisan at this point. Now he's not really appointing 7 members or anything like that and afraid to step on toes. Now he can do it more efficiently. Yes, Mr. Rupp?
I mean, the idea about the advisory committee was to be a representative group of taxpayers
Mhm.
that understand all the financial information
Yes.
that's put forth, and really on behalf of the citizens. So
Yep.
it sounds like the way you're going about doing it, it's more they're becoming representatives of the different departments and committees.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that that's, you know, really getting to the point of the advisory committee's role.
So the advisory committee, when you're going to the other, I mean, Templeton Light, Water, and Sewer, they don't have a budget. We're not creating a budget for them. The Board of Assessors doesn't have a budget that's gonna be in scope for, as if we made Alan Mayo on this committee. I mean, there's not representatives from these entities. They're making appointments at large. So you now have a total of 25 people out there looking and scouring for representatives on this. So it's not, we're not appointing people from these entities. You're appointing people from the large community, but at different walks of life. You now have 25 people looking for potential recruits to a finance
Can
committee.
you talk through that a little bit?
Yep.
How would that work? Today, people fill out a form of interest.
Yep.
And now they have to deal with 5 different boards in order to go about doing the same thing?
No, so if for you, Mr. Grupp, if you wanted to serve on the finance committee, you could go to the school committee and say, I'd like to have an appointment. Have someone from the school committee sponsor you to make an appointment, and they would just make their recommendation. They'd look at their pool of candidates. Maybe they say they want to sit on it. It would be the finance committee's job, or members who want to be appointed to the finance committee, to either approach these committees, like the school committee, or it would be the members of the school committee to fill their appointment. If no one's approached them, that comes to them saying, we need to get somebody to get our voice in the community. I'm sorry, I keep saying finance committee, advisory committee, my apologies. Does that answer your question, though?
It does, I just don't think that it does a good representation of citizens
No.
going through those boards.
This is the
as opposed to,
dialogue, so
you know,
what do you
moderator,
think?
as you say, is, you know, supposed to be completely independent.
Well, versus one person,
Right,
the moderator, one guy,
right.
one person alone. You walk up at the meeting and say, oh, I wanna join this club. Here's my letter of intent, and he has 30 days to make his recommendation or not. If he does it after 30 days, guess what? The board, the advisory committee can make their own recommendation and bring their own, whoever they want on, without any other dialogue. They could vote their members to vote whoever on their committees, whoever they want.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I think also when you look at the Board of Assessors versus the people who are on the Board of Assessors versus the people that are on the school committee are probably 2 different demographics. I mean, you're not gonna have somebody on the school committee that really doesn't have children, didn't have children, or versus somebody on the Board of Assessors, which may be a totally different walk of life compared to that. So now you're really getting to the demographics of Templeton to get an even spread. Versus the town moderator, which may know people in the community, he may get approached by people at the annual town meeting for that appointment. But now you have a much more into the society, into the community, I should say, of Templeton. Mr. May?
Well, a couple of things. One, it sounds like that I can, if I want to get on the advisory committee, basically, and I would say apply through the school committee.
Yep.
Because I'd go to each individual group, as far as I understand.
Yeah, you could.
You can go to
And they,
one
and
group.
they, and they reject me, and then I can go to the next one over here, and
Certainly.
they can reject me or approve me. But I have to go all over the place to each one of these
Yeah.
to apply. I wouldn't be able to just be at the town meeting and put in my application, and these people review it.
Yes. So the point being is that if you were denied at the school committee, doesn't mean you're gonna be denied at the Board of Assessors. Like I said, they're 2 different entities. So you may, I mean, maybe all 5 deny you, maybe you go to the first one and it picks you. I think that would be for whoever it is, the person
And I
to really
guess
know.
my point being is, it appears as though in town, since we have 14 open slots right now
Mhm.
for committee members, that we already have a hard time getting people to join the committees and fill the committees. this would appear to make it more difficult.
I don't think so. I think if anything,
If
you
I
get a
gotta go
much
to
bigger,
five
larger
different
pool.
individuals to attempt to get on, because that's what I'd have to do.
You,
Rather
yes,
than
you.
applying once, I'd have to apply to 4 or 5 different entities.
Mhm.
That's more difficult.
For you, for the implying individual, but like I said, now you have these
Talking about.
committees who
I see
would
But
like, oh, yep.
I think what might work, again, it's a conversation,
Mhm.
is if people wanted to, apply, that we could do that in a single pool. So now we have this single pool of people who are interested in being on the committee.
Mhm.
So now the 5 individual, appointing authorities can look and say, all right, do we have somebody that we want to solicit or appoint? If not, let's go to the pool and see who's in the pool and see if there's any of those folks that we would want.
That makes sense.
Because I do kind of agree, if me as a citizen, I wanna be on this committee, me having to go to beg at 5 different, or apply at 5 different organizations, that's a lot of work for me.
I see, so if you do your application and whatever other resource you say, like a resume, say you bring it to the Board of Selectmen office, they'll scan it, then send it to the 5 organizations for the pool.
I think when you phrase it as beg, when you're going to these
Yeah,
different
I
committees to
corrected
beg.
that, it was wrong.
But when you're going to these different committees and you're saying, hey, can you add me to your agenda? I'd like to get, I feel as though if you're going to these committees and you're asking, you already have a good idea of who sits on this committee. So if I wanted to go to the school committee, I would make sure that, I reached out to the chairman, or chairwoman, I think it's Rayanne Trifilo right now, and said, hey, do you think you can add me to the agenda? I'd like to be a finance committee appointee, or advisory committee appointee.
I just, my personal opinion is I think that's an implement or impotence to getting people to join. It just seems like we're putting a hazard in. My other question would be, are we gonna be doing this for all committees and boards throughout the town?
No,
It's
just
a
the
good
finance
idea.
committee, or the advisory committee.
Just curious.
Yeah, and I just answered, it was just the advisory committee.
Yes, Bernie?
I would think you would want some sort of a group or a committee like you're talking about, made up of all 5 entities, looking at a pool of candidates or applicants, so that all 5 entities don't pick the same person. You'd have to make sure.
Almost as a
that you have-
subcommittee, you're saying, based off of this, like a joint subcommittee to review applicants at the,
Right, right.
okay.
The upside of this, I think, is that you wouldn't have what happened last year, in that the moderator chose, I think he had to appoint 3, and the way he appointed them was take them in chronological order that they applied.
Yeah.
That's the only way he did it.
Because he wants to be bipartisan, and that's the issue that
That
he
has nothing
faces.
to do with a person's qualifications.
None, 0.
Correct.
0.
Correct.
He didn't,
The downside is that there's gonna be a perception there that whichever candidate is appointed by, let's say, the school committee, is gonna be siding with school committee issues. He's gonna be coming from that.
Well, he
field
should,
of-
he's part of that demographic, that's the point, is that nobody on the.
one of 5 people.
Yeah, so now you have a conversation, it's a dialogue at this committee meeting, where it's now one person who's vying for families and children, one's vying for the older demographic, one's vying for recreations, one's vying for the DPW, vice versa, it's now a dialogue
Well, I would
rather than
hope
a
that you'd have
hybrid.
someone that's not vying for any one particular entity. You'd have a person, a citizen from town who's open to all of these 5 areas.
That would be, if we could obtain that in a small pool of 8,000, I don't know how many citizens we actually have as legal voters in Templeton.
Just over 5,000.
To obtain that with the numbers that we have showing up to our 5,000, I mean, we have what, 250, 300 that attend our annual town meetings alone and on the boards and committees. That would be absolutely awesome. If we were a community like Framingham, I would agree with you 100%. But unfortunately, it's just not a realistic way to have that bipartisan mindset coming into these finances. It's tough. So it's best to get a representation, I think, of all
As
walks
me
of
as a
life.
citizen, I can't know all of the things that are important to the school committee and the school, and know everything that's important to the DPW, and everything that's important to the finance department, and everything that's important to the the Board of Health and everything like that.
Which is why the advisory board appoints different areas of the town to certain advisory board or committee members.
Is that what you guys currently do?
That's what this would attain is,
You guys currently appoint anybody to a certain area of the town currently? In the advisory?
Capital planning.
No.
So do you have a certain person that you guys represent or a certain department in the
When I was
advisory?
there, I was appointed to
You're gonna assign them to functional units.
coordinate with the Veterans Rep.
Mhm.
I was appointed to the Health Department, which was totally new to me.
Yep.
And I went down and had to talk with that gentleman and got some literature. There were 3 or 4 areas that I was responsible for.
Yeah,
Are you doing that now, Mr. May?
Not that I'm aware of.
You don't do that now. So that's not, they don't even do that anymore.
Yeah, I don't believe that's by the bylaw.
The only other question I have is, revising a bylaw is extremely important issue.
Yes.
Yes.
And do the bylaws allow us to do this at a special meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't believe there's anything in the bylaws.
There are some statutes which require that the actions can only be taken at an annual
Mhm.
town meeting. This is not constrained in that way. You can make changes to this particular bylaw at a fall town meeting.
I'm
Or what you
surprised.
would
Just
refer
like
to as a
just-
special.
Just like the first one, it's a fall town meeting. I think we don't even call it a special, it's a fall town meeting.
I'm trying not to call it
It's
special.
it's a fall town meeting and we have an annual town meeting.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of merit to this. I like, Cam's explanation, and as he explained it, I can really see, yeah, this would be able to expand the reach of,
I
so
found
that
that when
it
I
gives it a
read
more
that.
well-rounded, look. But I do think we need to have a little more conversation on, what the application process would be for somebody who is outside of one of those groups that.
I think that could be something, I don't know if we have to hard code that in the bylaw or something, but maybe, in discussion with, like the light, the water, sewer, I'm gonna see them tomorrow night, the light and water. But I had phone calls with John Driscoll and, you take a look at some of the people that serve on those committees, those commissions, I should say. Much more blue collar versus if you're going to somebody on the school committee, which is, you have families. Board of Assessors is much more, analytical in nature. So you get a good scope of what is Templeton, I think, by going into these committees, because the people that they associate with and that they know and hang out with, and, you can get much deeper into the community than you could with a town moderator.
What
Yes,
happens if
Mr.
you don't
Burns.
get enough applicants?
If you don't get enough applicants.
Let's just say, for an example,
Yeah.
none of these committees can come up with anybody, or not enough. Let's say you only get 3, and only 3 people put in letters of interest.
Well, you
You
form
have
a quorum. I'll entertain that, I'll entertain the idea. The what if, I love the what if scenario. So if that was the case, we would not have an advisory committee and there would be some serious issue. However, I think between the Board of Selectmen and the town moderator, and I'm hoping that the school committee would want somebody else on there, but that is an unfortunate reality that we would face. However, I think the outreach and the ability to kind of get a fresh start with getting these demographics, I think it sounds a little lucrative. I know some people have been hesitant to serve on the advisory committees because of the toxicity in Templeton and in Town Hall, but I think getting that fresh start with fresh members and people that are willing to roll up their sleeves, I think it would attract a good candidate base.
Yeah, and again, if it's a charge of these appointing authorities are, town entities, if you will. Part of their charge is to appoint someone, So if there's nobody in the pool, they're still charged with appointing someone. So if they're not appointing someone, are they really doing, their responsibilities?
Right.
And I do want
Much
to
like the
mention.
committees that don't appoint somebody to capital planning before we revise the bylaw.
I do want to make mention that this is done in the community of Littleton. Exactly, this is actually what it's modeled after. If you look at it, it's very similar. When I had reached out to a member of the finance committee there, and that's why I keep alluding to it as a finance committee, I can't remember his name, but he had said that a lot of the appointments out there were very seamless. I know Littleton and Templeton are 2 drastically different communities almost, but he said it does give a good, easy snapshot of it, and people don't seem to have quarrel with it. And it's been in place since 1963 or 67 in Littleton, and it's been working very well for them, so. as you can tell if you've been into Littleton lately.
Bernie, you have any other questions?
There's
I see
just
the
one,
wheels turning.
just one thought.
Yeah.
I remember a discussion in the past about 5 maybe being a slightly small number for the board. Historically, they had a tough time, I heard, meeting a quorum.
With 5?
So you might want to keep it at 7 and
Okay.
let the moderator do 3, or bring in a couple of more entities in the town if you decide to go this way.
Do you have any recommendations as to what entities you think would capture a more accurate snapshot?
Not at the moment, I'd have to think more about that.
Okay. No, I would be very interested to hear the feedback on that.
And just like you said, I mean, there was some issues with gaining capitalization on the 7 individuals for the longest time. I don't know, it was a few years. I mean, I think this is the first year in a long time the advisory committee at this point is staged at 7, I believe, correct? And I think it's been years since it's been like that. So having a committee of 5, bringing it down one level to 5, that might open up, so that way you will know you're gonna get the numbers and the members to build that advisory committee and the demographics within the organizations that are gonna be selecting, their individual.
I think you have a waiting list right now around 5 or 6 people.
That's great. That's
Excellent.
great. That's how it should be. They should want to do more with the government. I mean, again, it's gotta be as transparent as it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, right down to what their scope is and what they need to do, and working well with all organizations within the town, because that's what the advisory committee is there for.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a discussion, it's a debate, and I think that's what
Mhm.
helps move government
If you
forward.
wanna do it at 7, you could give the moderator 3 slots, that would be 1 a year.
Okay.
I just put that out there.
Yeah.
I'd have to talk to the current moderator and see, what's in his scope and what he feels comfortable, doing. And like I said last time, he said, I don't really know, do I pull resumes or something? So maybe if we do the 3 appointments, we can sit down and see exactly, if he wants that
I just put that out there as a
responsibility.
suggestion, because if you wanna move this forward, and you wanna move it forward to the fall town meeting, the window to do this is very small at this point.
Town council is reviewing, correct?
No,
They're not reviewing this one?
they didn't review these last 2,
Okay.
because I'm cheap, and I didn't wanna have 'em work on them until I saw some nodding heads coalesced around moving those
Okay.
forward to town meeting.
All right. Would you want
He
to
will get them tomorrow morning,
Okay.
along with, whatever changes.
So, I mean, yeah,
Come out
I'm
of
curious to
tonight.
see if coming back that the school committee is within scope, because there might have to be some wording on that to make sure that we can do that
Right.
regional, that we're, we have a body that is regional, making an appointment to a Templeton resident for budget. I mean,
Right.
like
So
I said, it's
You
not.
could always have the 5 members of the school committee itself, I mean, if that's what your concern
The
is.
school committee was to make an appointment to capital planning
Mhm.
in the past.
Okay.
Before this recent bylaw change.
Okay, so maybe that
Yeah,
would still
I'm
work.
not really, I think that's more of a political issue. Do you want a body that's got representatives of another community appointing them? Then I think it is a legal body. But we can get that resolved.
Okay. Mr. May?
Yeah, my only question was directed towards Mr. Terenzini, was that if we do go about this change, and I heard like requiring resumes potentially, the things like that, does any of that set a prerequisite or set a problem with other, let's say, boards and committees in the town? If we start setting certain requirements for individual boards, just,
I wouldn't consider that a
I
requirement.
was asking Mr. Terenzini not to, but.
Okay, Mr. May, I got it.
May I?
Yes.
Um,
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Well, I haven't heard the part of the resumes, but it's what each appointing authority wants, and I think right now, the boards would like to see, the form, indicating interest and a little bit of, have you served on some committees before, and how much time do you have? I don't remember exactly what's on our form. What areas of interest do you have? What do you do for work? It's not a resume, but it,
Just basically says
to
your
get-
work history and your, what are you interested
I think
in?
there's an effort to get a sense of, are your interests and your background a good fit for this? I don't think it's a problem. Each appointing authority can do what they want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we just want to get an air. I mean, are we?
Yeah,
We
I'm
like
I'm
this?
good. I like
I
it.
think there's a lot of merit to
I
it.
think it is.
I slaved over that. So, like I said, it's modeled after Littleton. rather.
So let me just, I think we've got a section, an 8 section.
Yep.
At this, it speaks to the members, who shall appoint the members. It speaks to their terms, how they will initially be set, how vacancies are set. Ineligible, as opposed to eligible, it's more ineligible who can't be appointed. It makes it clear that they can serve upon any committee provided for in the bylaws, and serve upon temporary ad hoc committees. That was that change that we made last spring that I don't think you wanna lose.
Right.
Their primary duties being managing the reserve fund, and then reviewing any matter requiring, guidance and fiscal impact. When you have to have items to them, and they've been changed from date specific to days before the meeting.
Gotcha.
So when the meeting date floats, there's still, the 14 days, there's still 30 days. And so that floats, but that accommodates any change you make in the future, and then the transition. And this is, primarily Cam's work over the last, couple of weeks now. I'll raise the issue of the school committee. I think that's workable.
Yep.
The takeaway that I have from tonight is whether or not you wanna go to 7 members, and if so, who you wanna make that appointing authority. I throw the moderator out only because it's easy.
I think, so Littleton, they have 7 members themselves, but they do 2 from the Board of Selectmen and 2 from the school committee. And 1 from the moderator and 1 from the other entities. So,
It's up to you, but if you guys want some time to think about this, shoot me emails. Like I say, I'm running out of time.
okay. Yeah, if
get this
you wanna be this focal point of dialogue and we can bounce ideas
Sure.
off you, I think. And then obviously, community has input into this too, as this is theirs as well, so.
Okay, so, I'm gonna send this to town council as is, but let them know that, a soft change may be coming with respect to total composition and appointing authority.
Sounds good. Mr. Mayor, you have any other questions? Did you read, was it read well? I mean, as far as the material, or the changes?
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for asking, Rick.
Okay. Again, we're just as curious. Same with you, Bernie. I appreciate your input.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Okay, so, that's all that I had on the warrant.
Yep.
That'll go back to town council tomorrow with the changes that have come out of tonight, along with anything we learned from DOR. And it'll be on your agenda for Monday night.
Okay.
The next item on your agenda, and we've got the same 3 we had the other night, was Doug had suggested that we bring the matter of the day of the meeting and town hall hours back into a workshop when you hope to have a fuller group.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what
we
your
don't have a
pleasure
fuller group, so, I mean, just some additional discussion I would have. I'm good with the town hall hours, I don't have any problem with that.
Currently?
The proposed
Oh,
change.
okay.
The employees, this is really what they've asked for, so I'm good with that. I've thought a lot about, though, changing the meeting to Wednesday. And I think, there are other committees, like the school budget committee, that meet on Wednesdays as well. And we have an appointment to that committee. So if we change our meeting to Wednesday, we're now just shooting ourselves in the foot because we now can't
That makes
have
sense.
our representative attend that meeting. So I think if we want to change it to a Wednesday, we need to do it at the beginning of the fiscal year so that everybody can plan their fiscal calendar around that change.
Okay.
I think just changing it in the midst of the year that's already, will just create us some wrinkles that we don't necessarily need to deal with. So at this point, I would not be in favor of changing it to Wednesdays
Okay.
now.
So do you want, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, no, I didn't think about other committees and how that change would take place. I think, maybe you're right with that discussion of saying, if we do change town hall hours now, not town hall hours, the selectmen meeting days, so suddenly without consulting the other boards and seeing, and kind of feeling that air out, if they would be willing to change, or vice versa, to make things where, I think that might be a much more drawn-out discussion. So, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, John, but maybe if we reach in and come back to this issue in maybe a month's time after we kind of talk to these other committees and see, you know, why they're scheduling for Wednesdays or something along that line.
And most of those committees aren't scheduling every single Wednesday.
No.
So, I mean, and neither do we. We have 2 Wednesdays, it would be 2 Wednesdays a month, and obviously offset the difference. I mean, doing it as fast as it is now, I understand. Putting some feelers out there with the other boards and committees, I think that would be, you know, and getting their input, I think that's smart. You know, I mean, obviously, the only reason why, you know, Wednesdays is good for, at least what I can see, for us moving forward, is we do a lot of things on Wednesday. We sign the warrants on Wednesdays. We can actually do all that communication right then and there when we meet, versus on a Monday. Then we have to come back on a Wednesday, which again is no problem for most of us. But then most of the holidays are on Monday, so then you have to battle the holiday Monday thing as well. So no matter which way you slice it, if it's keeping them on Monday and battling the holidays, and then coming, and again, coming back in on Wednesday to sign the warrants, or having the meeting on Wednesdays and then, and doing the warrants, and not, the meetings wouldn't be interrupted by any typical holiday. But again, that would be, I think, but again, getting the feelers out with the other committees, I have no issue with that, to see what they would like to see
Mr.
happen.
Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chair and Zini, with the feedback for town hall hours, what exactly is the general consensus with the citizens at town hall, or the employees at town hall, not citizens?
With respect to,
With respect to the town hall hour changes,
they want the change.
they want it.
What they're not gonna want is if you move your meeting night, if we move the long day to your meeting day.
Okay.
So we don't need to.
Yeah, that wouldn't affect us, okay.
That's
so-
not necessary. And if we need to speak to one of the directorates anyways, or they need to brief us on whatever subject or topic, I mean, they're gonna be here anyways, by appointment or by them, asking to be on the agenda. So I don't think that's gonna affect.
These can be independent decisions. The challenge is, and you can do your calendar on a calendar year basis, or you can do your calendar on a fiscal year basis. The challenge for us in the short term is that as soon as the town meeting warrant is done, and Kelly's like a week away from it, she's gonna do her revenue projections, and we're gonna build our schedule for the whole fiscal 19 budget process. And so, if you're gonna change to Wednesday night, I understand you might wanna talk with the school committee. I can't think of anyone else. I think the advisory committee meets on Wednesday nights, but you're at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, switch.
And so they'll just have to move to another room.
Well, more the
or-
conflict of interest, where if
or,
like Diane serves on the
yeah.
school building committee.
But we really need to,
I think you
at
do.
least until June 30 of 18, we need a decision pretty soon as to what your meeting night is gonna be, or I can't build those calendars.
Okay. I mean,
So we should vote this Monday.
yeah, for sake of synergy, I mean, I'm in favor for Wednesdays
I'm
on
in favor
signing
for
the warrants and
Wednesdays.
things like that.
I would be at the beginning of the fiscal year, but not in the middle of the fiscal year.
Understood. I'm in favor now, and I'm in favor of what the employees are looking for as far as hours. I think that's, you know, keeping them engaged and keeping that synergy alive here, and you know, making the community and the atmosphere here better, to take care of our employees. I think is crucial to their
I
livelihood.
have a totally different opinion, so I'm not sure that mine would be a,
Well, go ahead
An
and shoot it.
objective.
You're an employee here and you're.
well, I mean, the consensus, as we've all talked, is, you know, the late night, you know, is a great idea, but there's no residents taking advantage of that. I mean, when you look, we changed the hours in January, and here we are in October. You know, we've maybe had 5 townspeople in that span of time. You know, it's kind of like,
Abysmal.
I mean, it's kind of like, I think potentially we could look at, I mean, this is again my opinion, that, okay, during tax season, the tax office would be open, you know, 2 late nights in that week. Or like the town clerk stays open now for an election, you know, when there's the deadline for, you know, I mean, there would be specific purposes. But I think for general purpose of being here late every night, I don't see the need for it, but that's my personal opinion,
Well,
so.
Okay.
that's okay. I mean, this is what it's all about. I'm just gonna add to that, because, yeah, keeping the town hall open, one night late, it's one night late, correct, if I'm not mistaken? One
Yeah.
night later. I think it's important for 2 roles. It does give the people the opportunity to come in and pay bills if they want. If they don't take advantage of that, that's okay, because the employee still has work to do.
Well, yeah.
So we're still utilizing the employee to do the king's business. So if the townspeople do come in, that's great, but if they don't come in and don't take advantage, we're still having those hours utilized for the employees to do what they need to do, for work. So, I mean, to segregate hours based on time, you know, like you said, like, you know, when you pay bills because of tax season, or because there's an election coming up, I think those hours are not so altered, but I think,
It's tough to really get that message out
Yeah,
there
it's
saying
really-
the office will be open late.
yeah, it's really, I mean, I get it, as a small community town hall that we are, I mean, even getting these minor changes out is gonna take a lot of discussion and a lot of Facebooking and a lot of emailing and a lot of information that's being pushed out so that people do know. We do have it on Channel 8. I know it has been in the newspaper. I know a lot of, you know, Facebook fans out there. I know it's been out there, and on our town website as well.
Like
But-
I said, it's just my opinion.
No,
It's just
I
mine.
like your opinion. I
Yeah.
know, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything wrong with
Yeah.
it. Jesus.
Yeah.
No.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, no, I'm just, you know, I just, that's my
Do you
opinion.
think
Yeah.
that having the ability for us to come in and add signing the warrants to the agenda on Wednesday nights is something that,
I think that's very,
Unless you're willing to come in, have a meeting every single Wednesday night, don't do that.
yeah.
What are you gonna do? Vote on the, with all due respect, seriously. You're gonna vote on the warrants this week,
But not next
and
week.
then next week you're just gonna sign them? And
Yeah,
then
we-
the next week you're gonna vote on them?
Yeah, that's not.
You're setting yourself up for,
Yeah, that's not good. We can't do that. We just gotta, you know, dialoguely sign them.
you guys don't wanna see each other every Wednesday?
Oh, I have
Alright,
no.
Fine, all right, I see you.
No, I don't.
All right, I get it. You
No,
don't
I don't
wanna-
mind seeing you
wanna
on
see
Wednesday
me.
and have our meetings on Wednesday so we can, you know, sign the warrants, but I think to do our business meeting, I mean, we're killing 2 birds with one
then you're gonna
stone.
have to have a section of the warrant, so you're
All
you're
right,
here.
I'll fight that argument next year, because, all right, so we won't add it to the agenda this year, but
Yeah.
I'll fight that
Well,
next year.
when you're not
'Cause
chairman,
that's
you
something
can
we
do
need to,
that.
yeah, we need to review that stuff on a weekly basis. You guys aren't gonna like me if I'm chairman, I'll tell you that.
You're not gonna like a town charter where the town manager signs the warrants and you don't anyway, so.
That's right.
Yahoo, I'm all for that.
Thank you so much.
But I wanna be sure I got the takeaway.
Yeah.
You got the takeaway.
I got the takeaway that the hours seem okay, so I'm putting it back on the agenda for a vote.
Yes.
Yes, yep.
And I got the takeaway that the matter of the day of your meeting isn't settled, but it's going back on the agenda for a vote
Yes,
Monday night.
yes.
Hopefully we
I'm
can
good.
incorporate Julie into that conversation,
I'll send a message.
possibly.
I will just say that whatever your decision is going to be,
It needs to be done.
I need
Monday.
a decision Monday
You
night
got it.
that
Certainly.
carries you through at least June 30,
You got it.
2018, so I can build my schedule.
You got it.
Stop losing that hair.
Okay. The next thing, if I could,
The goals?
yeah, I had some questions on a couple of them. You'll kind of see the way that this starts to flesh out. So what we have, and unfortunately, some of the folks who suggested some of these things aren't here, but, so let me use the skate park as an analysis, okay? As an example. I need to have a sense of what it is the person's looking for, because I need to put a dollar amount on it. Now, A project like that is frankly probably several years in the making. So whether you're gonna get Conway School of Design to come in, do a sketch for you, do a cost estimate for you, maybe that's $5,000. So let's say that happens in fiscal '20. Then in '21, you go for the money, and in '22, you start construction. Annual survey on how the public views the government. I'm not really sure exactly, we talked about that. What were we looking for there?
Right, so that one is mine. You know, my thought would be, you know, I don't know what the appropriate time of the year, is it, you know, July in regards to the last year, or is it, you know, February, you know? But anyway, it's just something to go to the community to allow them to say, you know, these are the services that we would want that you're not providing, or these are problems we see with the way you're doing, you know, X.
So
you know,
customer satisfaction type survey?
pretty much, you know, is our government satisfying your needs? If not, why? What do you think we could do better? You know, I don't know exactly what the questions would be, I'm not a survey guru.
Okay.
But,
That's
you know,
that's the
those
kind of thing where we could do a newsletter.
Satisfaction survey.
We could do a newsletter, even starting out 2 8.5, you know, double-sided, that drives people to SurveyMonkey or something like that. Is that the kind of thing that you're,
Well, you can put in the mail out that we do for the census.
that's the one that I have found, historically has the best response rate. The one in the tax bills, if it's just a newsletter, that's
They get thrown.
that's fine.
Right.
But I've found that the census has the best return rates, because people, for the most part, actually read that to see what they have to fill out.
Right.
But basically, so it's customer satisfaction type.
Yeah.
If
And I
you were
would
gonna give us,
limit
if you were gonna give us an extra dollar, would you be most likely to give it to us for XYZ, that kind of stuff? Okay.
And again, I would limit that to like maybe like a 3 or a 5 question.
Yeah, certainly no more than
Something, you know, again, generic but to the point, so we get a good read on the town.
Right, because again, you know, while we all have, you know, our groups of citizens that come to us and talk to us, we don't get to talk to every citizen. So, you know, getting I think a broader sense of how everybody feels, would be valuable to us.
That's great, and they can all be collected by the town clerk.
The
Yeah.
next, I'm sorry, I didn't.
So just, you know, we mail it out, I don't remember, did the census have a paid return envelope, or, I don't remember if,
I
you know,
don't
if,
recall.
we should give the people the option that they can,
Doesn't it?
you know,
I don't recall.
I don't recall either.
The census, it has a paid return, doesn't it?
That has to be,
I don't think you
I don't think it has a paid return on it.
Yeah, so then there'd probably be a pretty good return then.
Yeah.
You know, or we could give the people the option, you know, send your thing back in or go to SurveyMonkey. But there's, you know, a lot of people that aren't gonna go to SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, I
Fill
would,
it out.
I've, in my, not my large experience, but with surveys and stuff like that, I mean, you don't wanna give too many options.
Yeah.
You don't give options, you, here it is, this is what it is, you send it back with your census, and that's it. Now, hopefully we'll get a large sense.
The challenge is the data input.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to sign up.
And the
And I will help you with
and the challenge is the age as well.
Mhm.
Folks above 50 tend to return the written ones. Folks below 50 tend to go online to do it.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Data entry, I remember that job. Stop it.
It can be brutal.
That is brutal.
Restore and manage emergency buildings. I'm not sure whose this was, and I'm not sure why it's just
I don't know, that wasn't
says
mine.
emergencies buildings.
What now?
On the backside, there's the EOC building.
Yeah, these were two separate suggestions.
What one are you on? The
Um,
skate park survey.
Skate park, the survey, the technology,
We already knew that
I'll
one.
talk with Doug about that
Yeah,
one.
one right below the K-9 program.
The K-9, restore and manage emergency buildings.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what that one is.
It's not mine.
Not mine. Oh, actually, you know what? No, I don't think this was mine, but I think I remember wasn't there something to do with the doors on the emergency building that they wanted to
That was with the emergency management building.
That's what it's going through the CPC.
Okay, I think that might be where that's coming from.
But that's the EOC.
Oh, okay, that's the EOC building there then?
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
Okay,
I mean, I did one, not exactly like that, but that we need to invest more in building repair and maintenance, you know, because we've just.
So if I
left-
strike the word emergency there, that's more reflective of what the board's looking for?
Sure.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, we should.
Roll sewer payment processing to town hall, that's,
Yep.
we hope to have some movement on that. It's proven a challenge on lots of different fronts, including the monthly reconciliations. The debt smoothing on the 5-year financial plan, I understand what's being looked for there.
Yep.
The policies updating the bylaws, I think we've already actually made progress on that.
We sure did, yeah.
We still got 30 and 40B,
We do.
but I can take
The,
that on
working with the light and water, I think that, the process that we used this year frankly worked fairly well and didn't rankle any feathers. Every time there's a discussion of a formal written pilot, you step backwards. I think we could certainly codify what we did this year,
Okay.
which is after I asked the general manager at the Light and Water to not entertain individual requests from individual departments, but wait till we were in the budget process and we could look at what the needs were for the town as a whole.
That makes so much more sense.
And then I could come to him,
Facilitate it.
as opposed to, providing a safety valve for a department head that felt they wouldn't, can't get what I want from the town, so I'll go over here. And I think it worked out fairly well, all in all, and they were, very accommodating when we had to switch the dump body to the sanders, and we had to do some other things.
Right.
I think the relationship, from my perspective, is,
We're all very reasonable people. I mean,
has
John
worked
Chris
out
is very
reasonably
reasonable.
well.
It is, and,
Yeah.
and that was mine, because I think one of the things that Tony had in his audit report was there's no mutual agreement that's in writing with that enterprise fund. So it wasn't like I was trying to tell, it could be whatever, the agreement could be, well, we will work on it every single year, collectively with the something. That way, when Mr. Roselli sees like, oh, we have worked out an agreement with the Light and Water Department, we have done what we needed to do, because I think even in the 2017's audit, you're gonna see the same thing, that there's no agreement with that body.
Well, you got a management letter in April, the chance that you're gonna get a different management letter in August.
Good point, good
Come on,
point.
man, we're hoping.
Good point.
The budget on Veterans Park, I wasn't sure if there was a
Yes.
budget for that, if there
There
was a
was.
design for that.
There was a
Where
budget
do
for
I
that.
find
That was,
that?
Holly has that, it's, CPC funds.
Okay,
I think it was $35,000 of dollars.
okay.
And I know the last word I got, I talked to the Army Corps of Engineers, and I know that she was going out to an architect, but someone put the drawings, the sketch of the park to get it so where it's supposed to be in size. And then, the money's
Okay.
still there, right?
So the way this would work, if this seems satisfactory to you, is I'll clean up the language a little bit, get cost dollars for the
Who
projects.
compiled this? Did you compile this?
No.
Oh, they spelled my name wrong. They spelled it Fortez with a Z.
Oh,
We thought she was Spanish, I don't know. What's wrong with you?
well, I think that was the day her kid was studying Cortez in school.
Yeah, is that it?
Where's,
At the
oh my
bottom.
God.
Tell her I got really upset about it. Tell her I was so mad.
Yes, I
Economics development.
I can't tell her, she has worked on a project the last couple of weeks, and she was, I think, kind of pleased with how she rose to the challenge, and she left me a donut this morning to thank me, so I'm not screwing that up, that's.
Understood.
So we'll put the dollars in responsible party, and then we'll, make sure that they're not all happening in a given fiscal year, but that they're
Gotcha.
laid out in a way that makes some sense.
Okay, sounds good.
Procurement and contract policy, I'm gonna skip over that, because Diane's not here tonight.
That's good.
Cameron had some suggestions on, and I think that's the one that I started to hand out and then grabbed back. I think that may have been only Doug's
Yeah.
that I took back.
I don't know,
And-
did you take mine? No, mine's right
In
there.
keeping with that, hang on just a minute here. Doug had worked up, where is the bloody thing? And this would be a nice addition. You could adopt this for the coming fall town meeting. And Doug had suggested when we were working on the bylaw for the town meetings.
Yeah.
That the board have a little bit more of a set. Doug, this is a little bit of a cleanup from
Okay.
what you had done. A little bit more of a set manner codified in your policies of how you were gonna get yourselves ready for town meetings. So what this says, may I, or do you wanna walk through it, Doug? or-
Yeah, give me a second to read
Betcha.
through what you changed.
Oh, this is awesome, Doug. I like this.
Can you implement it? Can you add that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we get to this, I'll incorporate that if you wanna have discussion on this first.
This one I did type, and in the second line, LED is supposed to be lead.
I figured that. There's two E's.
I must have been on my electrical mode. Typed
Wait, on
it
the
down.
second line in the first paragraph?
Yeah, it says
Yeah, yeah.
lead.
We'll take the lead, okay.
Take the lead.
All right. No, I like this, Doug. I think this sets it out easier, so we're not tripping over people's feet.
Yeah, cause again, we go into the town meeting and it's the last minute, oh, here we are, yep, I'll do that, I'm gonna do that, this is gonna do that. We just have this sense of unorganization.
No, you're absolutely right.
And we need to ensure that whoever is going to read an article, that it's not something that they have a conflict with.
Mhm.
Because at one of the town meetings, I got handed an article to read that was a conflict article, so I had to end up giving it to somebody else.
Right.
So we need to make sure that that doesn't occur.
You also do your research, your homework, you get all your stuff prepped beforehand so that if there's a
And
question
that's,
asked. you
that's
can answer.
extremely important. In the first town meeting I had in one town, I'm to like selectmen, okay, so who's taking, like, will you take them? No, I can't take 36 articles. No, the
Right.
town administrator does that. And I'm like,
Yeah, I like that.
the people out there don't like me. They want to see you all standing up there, and so you need to have, not just read the article, but have a mastery of the subject. The staff and I are there, we're there if there's a technical question.
Complimentary.
If you have something, obviously we're there to be supportive. But folks want to see their select board
Mhm.
representing these articles and advocating the position.
Yeah, I can.
I just want to sit in the
Slip this
back and
right
eat
in
my
for you.
bonbons.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go into this next. With this, I can definitely add this. This piece here with the Board of Selectmen organization operations, this is the policy. Most of this right here is boilerplate. It outlines what we do already, just kind of codifying it and making it formal. Now, I actually did include a few errors in here on purpose to make sure that people are reading this. So that's something you guys better search for, and I better hear those come up.
Like a time?
Yeah, that was actually one of them on purpose.
Like I ddid read this.
Okay, no, I'm just making sure, because I don't want this to go through and then nobody read it, and then then we pass this and it's like, oh, wait a second, that was in the select, because this is gonna be our Bible, this is our handbook here. So go through it, definitely read it. There's a lot of things in here that can be tweaked and changed to fit more what we're doing. Like the times is set for 7 o'clock on a Wednesday, right? That's something we need to work out. Are we doing it on Wednesday? Are we doing it at 7 o'clock? Are we doing it at 6:30? Are we doing it at 6 o'clock? These are things that we need to address in here. I know Carter had made mention, he has his qualms with some of them, where if we're saying we meet on a regularly scheduled Wednesday at 6:30, if we ever have to change that, no, we have to change the policy and remember that. So, typically, going through the top purpose, nature of the policies, it's just outlining what it is, role, selectmen powers and duties. The chairman, I know you had gone through those, but you have a lot of things that are incorporated in the chairman's responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then there's kind of how we set up the meetings, how we're doing the agendas. There's an item in here, and this is something that maybe particularly we need to think about. Is when we're doing the meetings, instead of doing a public, open commentary feedback, like a workshop, it's okay, because we're here to discuss and have a dialogue, but we go to the meetings.
Business meetings?
Yeah, if you look at any of the other business meetings that take place, you know, they show up, it's an hour and 15 minutes, and they do nothing but business, real quick, take motions, take votes. So the agenda is supposed to be put into a perspective where it's 15 minutes of public session, where the public can come up, they can make their statements, they sit up here, it's not a dialogue, it's not a discussion, they make their statements that they want about anything that's gonna be voted for, we can take that into account, we can obviously create a discussion if we'd like to around that item, but once the meeting's rolling, it's rolling, and if there's ever any nature of something that needs to be discussed, like Alan Mayo is sponsored on there, he can come up and make his statements and whatnot at the TA or the Board of Selectmen's approval to kinda go up and make his point. But it's to minimize that discussion, not so much as to curb the input of the citizens, but to make these more efficient, these meetings much more efficient. So you can be heard if you'd like at the beginning of the meeting, so we can take that into account. And in the workshops, we'll obviously discuss this in open session, so people can have their input beforehand. But those business meetings, because there's so much stuff included on those, to kind of curb that.
You should have that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least in there.
Okay,
Just
so
in
yeah,
case.
add the executive sessions on there.
Right, just in
Um,
case.
Yeah, and then, so yeah, that would be, yeah, 3 is open forum, citizens input.
Right.
The other thing is too, is we're kinda solidifying committees, boards, and commissions. So the committee appointments, we obviously make our appointments to them, but we can also retract them, and say, you know, if for whatever reason they're failing their obligation, they're not showing up to these meetings, they're failing to do their appointments, we can retract those. So we also have the power to appoint, and we do on those bases. We also, in there too, for those appointments, I believe prior it was, and I'm not sure the bylaw, this might be something we need to check. If appointments by the Board of Selectmen, I heard something kicked around that they're supposed to have 30 days after their appointment expires before they can be reappointed. That's what, somebody had kicked that around about a bylaw. But if not, this is to say that they're appointed for a 1-year term, junior level, which is expired July 1st. And then after that, they can be appointed for a 3-year term if they complete their first probationary period. And it goes immediately. So if you wanna get back on there, you can be appointed before, so when your term expires, you can still stack up July 1st and go for your full year. How we're advertising vacancies, meeting postings, correspondence, mostly boilerplate at that point, stuff we already do. And then it kind of touches in point 2 of how we conduct ourselves in the public, how we do outreach to citizens, how we talk to people, kind of giving us a general scope to say, you know, if you're gonna be a selectman, you really need to present yourself like a leader of the community, and so on and so forth with that. Which we do already, but it just needs to be said somewhere. And then participation, remote participation, we have adopted that in the town, so that's also included in here. And then the methods of that, and then open meeting law violations and things like that are in the very back. So all in all, I mean, it's just something, there are errors in here, so I'm looking forward to pointing those out, but definitely go through these and see if there's any items that you do or do not like. Because this needs to be a discussion, because this is something that's gonna mandate us if we pass it.
So, why are you putting the chairman involved with all setting up the tables and everything?
Yep.
Okay.
That's,
Is that on purpose?
that's not a mistake, that is,
I think that was a mistake.
no, that is your responsibility.
Okay, vice chair. Chair.
All right, I'll take it.
No, it was, I gotta tell you, Cameron, I mean, I did read it, and I was very impressed. I mean, a lot of it is boilerplate, and I know, you know, why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to?
Yep.
I get that. It's a little more substantial than what we had in the past, that was, again, it was well-written for the time. I think I gotta give Mr. Bennett kudos. And if he's watching this, Mr. Bennett, I'm giving you kudos, because that was your product that came forward, and that's what we've been utilizing. And again, it's the time to make things better. The only other suggestion I would make is, just like anything, any type of, policy thing like that, it's all the same font, the same.
And I was
everything should be the
actually
same.
looking to do something with that too. So this is, the way this is written, if you can see that it's a 1001
I
and
see
then
it.
it's a dash.
Yep.
So this sets you up to incorporate all your policies in certain sections, which is something I can do and clean that up and put it in so that we could have a binder of 165 pages
and you get-
that are all following this
I
format.
see what you're doing.
And if you'd like, I could do some sort of taking all the policies and putting them into this format and kind of compiling them into the same format with the same seal, or do something like that. So now we have a compendium of 165 pages of policy that are formatted. If we
Right.
need to insert something or redact something, which could even talk to stuff that, like, you know, if we had a fair policy in town where, you know, we're operating Ferris wheels or some sort of, like, weird stuff like that where we can't fit that into a bylaw,
Right.
but we put it in here. Or
Right.
if we're doing licensing, you know, what's our scope of licensing and approval, so that.
No,
something we
I
can-
like it. I mean, I understand
So-
this is, I've dealt with this type of structure before, but I just want to make sure that this is the same structure throughout. And then also on the, you know, the items, we can also put, you know, because most policies are reviewed every year annually.
Yep.
And when they go into effect, then when's the annual review? And then, you know, you can actually make sure those are done.
What is the current method of these policies and procedures? No, tell me you just jam them into folders and store them on computer drives, right? Is it all compiled somewhere?
It's in a.
I wish we
three-
had something that advanced.
It's in a 3-ring binder right now.
Do you guys want me to sit down with Holly, maybe on a Thursday afternoon, and kind of see, for her to give me these policies and procedures so I can standardize them? Just change format and get them into a binder using,
I mean, you don't have that many at this point,
No.
quite frankly. You've got
I think there's 5.
the half a dozen I've done, you've got the finance policies from the other night.
Yep.
And you'll have this one now, and they are, each one's in slightly different. The ones that I did are in the same format.
well, some of the ones that get a little bit more interesting are the ones where, you know, like you're looking at perpetual care accounts and things like that for those funds. I mean, you need to have, that's something that's much more involved, less boilerplate, but now we're looking at a perpetual care fund saying, you know, this is a green lawn account, and this is
Right.
how we handle and do this. So now
Right.
we have the selectmen's list where we see, you know, perpetual care account come from the warrant items, we can open it up and say.
Well, that would follow, I would assume,
In
that
the finance policies.
during the final review of the finance policies, I said to Michael, so maybe we should have another section, because we have the bad check electronic payments, dishonored electronic payments. We're gonna have cash turnover, we're gonna have petty cash.
Yeah.
And he suggested that we adopt them once a year, as they came up in the format that we'd written them in, and then once a year, just put them into the same enumerated status and amend the financial policies.
So there's also issue too that had come up, and when I was searching through what to kind of model this after, especially in this format too, there's certain things out there that are like policeman code of conduct, you know, what is their, not their right, obviously they have the right to enforce the road, but certain things along that, you know, when they're putting out signs, how they're patrolling that, even going into the fire, and though there's, so it's a compilation of all policies, organizations, and
you-
procedures.
You can't, well,
I'm not saying dictate how to do it, but
you
there's.
can't.
Let
You have a
me-
strong chief.
Let me see how this.
He's in absolute control of the department.
Yep.
Yep, on both sides.
You have a strong police chief who's kind of, sort of absolutely in control of his department, subject to a different set of rules.
Right.
You have bargaining, I mean, there are a lot of things that frankly don't tend to come in front of the select board.
Right.
Trying to think some of the other items that were on there in that inclusion. I mean, it was like, it was a DPW was in there between signing, and it was more or less the way they had written it, was like a charter without actually being a charter.
Some communities allow, the department heads to promulgate rules and regs for their department, subject to submitting to the
Yeah,
select
there
board.
was like an 800
30
section with
days-
cemeteries.
30 days
600
in
with
front of the
fines.
select board.
Mhm.
What size town was this?
Probably about 15,000?
15,000 people probably comes with substantially increased staffing.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, you're talking probably a 40-something million dollar town.
Oh, probably more than that. Because if I recall, I think it was Holden.
Oh, yeah, much more, yeah, I mean, Winston's 36 million.
Holden's dramatically different, and you
Yeah.
have to remember that the Holden enterprise funds are an integrated part of the community. I don't know about at present, but Brian Bullock was the general manager of the Holden Light Department, and he was town manager, and he drew part of his pays. And that provides you not only with a level of coordination, but a level of financial support to your financial units
Right.
that supports an additional level of sophistication. I mean, yeah, it's a dramatically different example.
Yeah, I'll have to find it and forward it over to you, but yeah, there's a nice structure where they compile it all, and
Yeah.
I'll see if it's within scope. Because if we can get more of these policies out and more of these, to kind of just help us sit down at a meeting and say,
Well,
this
it's
is what we
basically an
can.
administrative code of regulations.
Yep. Yep.
But if I might, circle back, did you like Doug's work, and shall I assume that I'm gonna follow that process?
Yes,
For the fall town meeting?
yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yep.
And I think that should be integrated into that,
And that's something I can absolutely do, no problem.
please.
And let me just take a minute, if I might, to tell you why I call it a fall town meeting, I don't call it a special, because there's nothing special about it.
No, it's a fall town.
Every community I've ever worked in has had an annual town meeting and a fall town meeting, because when you're working under the open town meeting form of government, you generally can't get through 12 months without needing them for whether it's bylaws or others.
Financial movements.
And so I've tried to get the staff to use that to drive home the theory that this is just the way you do business, and there's nothing special about it.
I understand. I think it's a good thing to do. Awesome. Great workshop.
We just,
Great job.
that one other item that we needed to
Oh.
discuss.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry. Well, we have a potential hiccup in the treasure collector's office. You may recall that by the time the resignation of the treasurer collector was all done, was signed, sealed, delivered, that's when we felt free to advertise the position. I've never felt comfortable advertising a position when somebody's still sitting in it, unless they've resigned under different circumstances. And so, we not only had, how many hours did the staff carry over?
110.
So we had a staff member that wasn't able to take their vacation as planned and carried over 110 vacation hours, if you remember, that approval sometime in May, I think.
3 weeks, or a little more.
And then, because we didn't have them off the books by July 1, they earned
Another 3 weeks.
5 weeks.
That's a hiccup.
So, the budget really wasn't built to handle that. And it comes to close to 6,500, did we figure this morning,
Pretty
Kelly?
close, yeah.
It's close to 6,500.
Okay.
So, I highly doubt that we can get through the year with that budget without it being supplemented. So we have a couple of choices. We put a little more supplemental into the operating budget, and we pay for it with free cash. I'm not thrilled with that idea, because we're using free cash to cover an operating expense, albeit supposedly a one-time,
Don't we have
non-recurring.
money in the selectmen fund?
You gotta,
You couldn't do a transfer?
it's only $1,100, and given how low the raises were and how far some of these folks have gone this year, I was planning to put together a modest employee recognition for exemplary service this year. You know, maybe 3 people for maybe $750. Nothing huge, but a little something to show some of the employees that their department heads
Okay.
feel have gone above and beyond, or come up with, you know, a great idea that has improved our communication or made us more transparent, or, you know. And at best, there's $1,100 there.
Okay.
So option one is we transfer some monies, we throw a little more at it. Option two is if one of the staff members does in fact fully retire, that's a possibility. where they wouldn't even be with us on a part-time basis. The 6,600 goes down to $3,000
Mhm.
or something. So we let it go, and we hope we make it through, and we figure it out in May. None of these are great options, but I can tell you, you're not getting through to June 30 without doing,
So we're gonna have to tap into free cash.
at some point,
I mean, we've got a backfill article right here.
we do.
We might as well, I mean, why not just add it there and be done with it?
That's
So my
quite
question
a
would be,
possibility.
What's the
who,
current backfilling?
do we know?
We're currently backfilling
Didn't we know?
DPW and fire and EMS,
For how much?
22,500.
We didn't budget for the 5 weeks.
But what I'm saying is, I mean, we knew that individual was still gonna be on the books after July 1st, and knowing the fact that her rollover date was July 1st, we
But she
had,
was to roll over at part-time, so she would not have been eligible for those.
but that didn't happen.
Right.
No, I mean, the budget was designed, you have to remember that the budget was designed in January to accommodate an employee who was going to be formally retired
Right.
and have used all of their time up by June 30, and then move into a part-time slot.
Understood.
Come April or May, when the treasurer collector, we began negotiations for their resignation. June 30 came, the employee was not retired, and they carried 110 hours over.
And she stayed full-time
And-
until 1 August.
She stayed full-time and had 5 weeks of time coming. It gave us close to, what'd you say, 8 weeks?
Yeah,
It gave us close to 8 weeks of vacation.
So she worked 4 weeks to get 8 weeks paid vacation. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Good use of the system.
It is definitely good use
If I
of the
was a town
system.
employee, I would've done it.
Well, that's the system that we have, and, every system has a quirk and a quandary in it.
No, so I mean, that, I
Had
think
we
you're
been,
right, you, Doug.
had the design of the budget, we gave you a budget in, mid-February.
Mhm.
Had that design, that plan worked,
It happens, I mean, I'm not
It happens.
red in the face, I mean.
I think I just
it
added,
happened. We gotta figure out how to solve it now.
the problem solved. Just add it to the,
Fine.
we'll add 5,
Yep.
and I think that any issues we can deal with between, the merit and equity pay account, if there's some dollars there.
Yep.
We can constrain hours, we'll look at some other possibilities.
And when
Okay.
is our first budget meeting? I mean, when are we starting to ramp up for budget process?
February 28th.
That's when we're having our hearings for budget process? and-
That's when I'll make my first presentation,
Okay,
and the schedule calls for you to invite the AC to attend. We'll set up some tables. I very much appreciate
Yep.
you going a touch outside your comfort zone and letting them ask questions. I think that's a very positive thing, and I do appreciate that.
Also real quick to add some added comfort too, when I talked to the DOR about the advisory committee, bylaw change, they said they were willing to offer training to any, if there's, say they've got an entirely fresh board of 5 new wet behind the ears, they said they would come down here and offer some serious trainings on a Saturday if they really needed to for these individuals, so.
at no cost.
At no cost.
At no
Yep,
cost.
It was, yeah, so they would tell us, if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do, and we'll come out there and make sure you guys have a functioning finance committee for budget season.
Advisory committee.
Advisory.
So I'm gonna send what we have to council,
Yeah.
but I am gonna ask you to ponder quickly
Mhm.
the issue of going to 7 and who the appointing authorities would be.
Okay.
And I would ask you to look at the handout from UMass, from Collins. One of the sections that's not in there has to do with their access to books and records. Certainly, free, unfettered, in exactly the form they want is what's not a good idea. That's what's generating a lot of the extra work. But when you see the Collins review of the different towns, some form of access to books and records
As they should, I mean, that's within their scope to
So if you could
make
look at that.
budget
Yeah, I will.
analysis
But they need
decisions.
to have, they need to get numbers that, have meaning. You can't, if you've got, I don't know exact examples, I'm not a finance person, but, you have this set of numbers. But unless you also look at these set of numbers, these aren't really true. They've got to understand that and they've got to look at, or they need to get something that's already combined those numbers to give them a true number.
Right, if you go down to like the town of Framingham before they converted to a city, I mean, you go to any municipal department with functioning finance department where they're building budgets and they have a huge, there's a director of finance there. I mean, they're doing analysis, they're doing 5-year P&L forecast analysis.
good.
And that's exactly what we need here, is they need those numbers to make their analysis and
And-
forecast and
and, you know,
recommendations. But they don't need transactional records on
They're on a
insurance
modified
payments.
accrual basis. If they're using purchase orders, they're on a modified accrual basis throughout the course of the year. We're on a cash basis. But I do think that if you look at the Collins report, some form of access, if you could allow for that, would help enhance the possibilities, the likelihood of getting this through. Because right now, it doesn't call for them to have any access.
Understood.
So do you want me to, we should probably add something in there too?
Yeah, just look at this.
That's my,
It's-
that's my
it's well written.
suggestion to
It's
you.
well written.
The,
In the performance of the duties, the
Did Mike-
advisory committee shall have access to, we got no problem answering the questions.
oh, and I saw that from those emails, absolutely. But, I mean, when you answer these questions and then they say, I need the documentation, it causes trip-ups.
Well, that's a level of micromanagement that the current language, I think, invites that we don't need. And the other thing, as Doug says, it doesn't mean anything. If you got a report that shows you're 25% of the way through the year, but you burnt 75% of your cash, Kelly's quarterly reports, I think, do a
Tell you
very
that.
nice
Why?
job of explaining why.
Well, and the monthly recaps, I think, which is also new for, because again, the things that we talked about, having those monthly recaps, this month for last month, as they go forward, I think, and even those explain if there's a discrepancy and why the discrepancy is there. So you got the monthly recaps, you got the quarterly report, and then you got,
and you-
how more transparent can you get?
In your appointments, you're going to need people that can read a basic, and we can come in and give them, and we've done this in other communities. What does this account mean? What does that account mean?
And that's
Why
what
is
the
my
DOR
account
said, they would
account
just
negative?
Provide that training.
Because
for
it's a
those who
grant, we spend the money, we get the reimbursement, that reverses it out.
Real quickly on the appointments, so out of Littleton, which I had based this off of, 2 members by the selectmen, 2 by the school committee, 1 by the board of assessors, 1 by the moderator, and 1 by the light and water commissioners. So we replaced the light and water commissioners with the
several.
several. That's how they do it, and I think it was Gary Wilson I spoke to. They said it incorporates just what they need, and it allows them to operate within their scope of duties and perform their functions.
But they're a larger community too.
Littleton, I mean, they're wealthier than we are. I think they're a little bit bigger in size, maybe 14,
Yeah.
13, but they're not.
I think the question is if you feel you need to go to 7.
I-
That's the first question. If you do, that means
I
you
don't think
need to
so.
add 2 people.
I think 5's perfect.
Can I,
7 now.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, but again, Brenda, we just got 7. We've been without 7 for 3 years.
Hmm.
It's only been 4 or 5 members.
There was 7 when I was there,
That was what, 2 years ago, right?
2.5.
2.5, yeah. So as soon as you left, your seat remained vacant, and then there was somebody else that left. So it was always,
I can attribute to that, to probably more the toxic environment and.
Yeah.
and as I think in
that's why.
their
one of the
report, they
reasons-
said, if you don't mind, John, they
Oh.
had said something along the lines of, risk creating a situation where any traits or points of view can become self-reinforcing, according to the town moderator, where if you have a full 5 people sitting on a board that you don't necessarily align with, that kind of.
Well, it's a
forces you off.
self-perpetuating board.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that could maybe shy away to
That's what
why if there
happened.
was some vacancies on that board, maybe people didn't feel comfortable serving.
Right, and with capital planning, we reduced it from 7 to 5.
75.
So do you wanna stay with 5 then?
I think,
If we have
We talked
5
about doing the
selectmen,
Hold on, Bernie, hold on, Bernie, one second.
if we have 5 selectmen, why would we have more advisory committee?
Why the hell does Spencer have 15 on their advisory?
I just, that makes no sense to me.
that must be a fun session,
That must be-
15 people?
That's like a, wow, that's a round table.
It's a quorum of what, 8 people?
It's a quorum of 8 people.
Wow.
And every time there's been an effort to reduce it, it gets quashed.
Oh, no, I think 5 is good.
Would you take offense if I drafted, I know you're busy, you're on the commute, if I drafted another section that spoke to access to records and shot you that for your review?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
we
you're
could.
gonna just take the boilerplate essentially from what they wrote and modify a little.
Yeah,
bit.
I'm gonna take a look at what's currently there,
That's perfect.
take a look at what Collins has proposed, talk a little about Kelly, and try to give them reasonable access in a manner that gives them what they need.
Yep.
And, you know, it's workable
At
for
the end of
us.
the day, the main priority of this bylaw change, for why I'm doing this, is I want a discussion with the advisory committee at the end of the day, so they need the tools necessary to make those analysis and those recommendations. They need the walk of life. That's the main game plan, is that when it comes to budget season, we can have a discussion
Yeah.
and get somewhere really, where we need to be in this community.
Well, it's the value of the input versus the value of the output,
Yeah.
too. The cost of the input versus the value of the output.
Right. Bernie, what did you have to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. Does our financial software allow view only?
It does, but you have to have a license, and it's $1,000 a year per license.
And the advisory board had this, if I might, had this number in time, such that they could have included it in a budget request if they wanted to.
I can't tell you how many times I've said, you people need view only. That way, you never have any questions. You
None.
could always go online, look at the numbers, and there'd be no argument. You could always ask where they came from, whatever, but they need view only.
Well, the other issue I have personally with this whole, you guys use Vadar still, right?
Mhm.
Is I don't like that program. I think that it's okay, but there are other programs that are much, much better. They cost more money,
A lot more.
but they're
And-
much better
And
programs.
let me just suggest to you that you will, shortly after you get it, find a number of things you hate about it.
And just like anything else, just like anything else.
The disaster in 2013 started with a change in software.
It was, that's when they went to Vadar, wasn't it?
Well, and it wasn't Vadar's fault, it was the
No.
files
It
that
was
were
input.
provided
I was
from
gonna say, I
here.
don't think that was the only problem.
So if the
Yeah.
advisory committee throws in $1,000 in their budget this year, or next year, to get a license for the
Mhm.
purpose of having a license, then they could view it.
They could view it, yes.
One person or all of them?
Well,
if
it's
they're
one
willing to-
license.
It's one
It's one
license.
license, so
Only.
they could all have access with their
Just
one
create the
license.
advisory committee access.
But there can only be one
But there
person
can only
in
be one
there at a
person,
time.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
One online at a time?
yes. Because it's all
And we-
web-based.
But
It's
all 5 or 7 could look.
Yeah,
Yes.
but they
Right.
could rip reports and do whatever they needed to and bring
Right.
them to the
Whatever they
meetings.
want.
Or one guy could, download.
The chairman of the board, or chairman of the advisory
Mhm.
committee could pull those reports and
Yes.
to provide for the
Right.
meetings.
Obviously, read-only means you can also download.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can print,
You
yeah.
can print.
See, these are the ideas we're looking for budget season, is to make
You
these
can
recommendations.
view, you can, print, you can download, you simply can't enter data.
And you never have disagreements or arguments between groups or committees or anything.
Well, it's not even a disagreement, it's like, it's the constant, right, the constant requests, which puts the burden on Kelly and the financial team and the staff to answer their questions appropriately and as quickly as they can, knowing the fact they're still trying to do day-to-day operations at the same time, which, it's really tough, and,
And even our answers are not, we can answer the question, but they don't accept it.
Because they don't understand
And
it
it just keeps going
sometimes.
on and on and on.
Well, let's not get too personal in nature.
But
here.
anyway,
anyways, but you're right, Bernie. So, did that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay, do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I love the answer, because the answer I got was, no, it can't be done.
Well, who told you that?
We're on tape still.
I hate to
Now,
mention
forget
names.
it, no,
Somebody
disregard that, disregard, we're on tape, I can't tell me that. All right, so I have a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion of second? Second. Okay, great.
Okay.
Cam,
Abstain.
I,
By the way, as long as those green lights
I vote
are on,
yes as
that
well.
means those lights are on.